The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, here. Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
here.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Cone, 25 present.
A quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by our very own Alderman of the 20th Ward, Alderman Craig Smith.
Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask for guidance in our deliberation and wisdom in our conclusions. Mr. President, I wanted to say that for years, but wait, there's more. I was supposed to try to bring some Franciscans this morning. I was unable to do so, so you're stuck with me. God hears all of our prayers, spoken or not. The cries of the families of Mike Brown, Kijami Powell, Vonderett Myers, Jr., Ladarius Williams, Eric Garner are heard just as surely as the prayers of Officer Darren Wilson and the families of Officer Norvell Brown, Sergeant Nick Sloan, and Officer Robert Stanzi. God hears the prayers in all languages, creeds, and genders of Palestinians and Jews, Bosnians and Croats, Iraqis, Iranians, black, white, brown, or other, gay or straight, the weak, the strong, richer or poorer, north side, south side, and even the central corridor of our city and our region. Religious or not, because in times of crisis, pleas for help arise, regardless of whether we have faith or not. And so it is with this understanding that I offer today a prayer combo. First, perhaps a more familiar one to you from St. Francis of Assisi. Señor, hazme instrumento de tu paz. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Donde haya odio, siembre yo amor. Where there is hatred, let me sow your love. Donde haya injuria, perdón. Where there is injury, pardon. Donde haya duda, fe. Where there is doubt, faith. Donde haya desaliento, esperanza. Where there is despair, hope. Donde haya oscuridad, tu luz. Where there is darkness, your light. Donde haya tristeza, alegría. Where there is sadness, joy. O divino maestro, O divine master, que no busque ser consolado, sino consolar. May I not seek so much to be consoled as to console. Que no busque ser comprendido, sino comprender. May I not seek as much to be understood as to understand. Que no busque ser amado, sino amar. May I not seek so much to be loved as to love. Porque dando es como recibimos, because in giving it is that we receive. Perdonando es como tú nos perdonas. It is in pardoning that you pardon us. Y muriendo en ti es como nacemos a la vida eterna, and in dying in you that we are born to eternal life. And then I say this one prayer that Sister Carol Orff of the Sisters of the Most Precious Blood said for us on September 18th, 2009. And this is the last part, which is her prayer, and it is my prayer for you today. May God bless you with the discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may live well deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you will work for justice, equity, and peace. And may God bless you with the foolishness to think that you may make a difference in the world, so that you will do the things which others tell you cannot be done. Amen.
Let's give the Alderman a round of applause. I think that was We've had a lot of prayers over the years at this Board of Aldermen. I think that was one of the best that we've ever had. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 14th.
Good morning, President Reed. I would like to have as my honored guest David Rudolph, Secretary of the Police Officers Association, Joe Steiger, President of the Police Officers Association, and Demetrius Alfred, President of Firefighters Local 73. Thank you.
Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guests Mr. Chris Pickle and Leroy Grant with AT&T. UE.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today a resident of 26th Ward and Vice President of Better Family Life, Deborah Ahmed. Thank you.
Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have as my special guest today Mr. John Chasnoff from Capcar, along with the other supporters of civilian oversight. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest, first of all, Cleo Willis, who was my first opponent when I ran way back in 1991. And there's Cleo over there. And also Ms. Ollie Mae Stewart, who is the 6th Ward Committee woman and a longtime friend of mine. And she has also 2 ladies with her.
Thank you. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Maureen McDonald, St. Louis Association of Realtors.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today, Mr. Anthony Lancia with AGC.
Alderman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today, Chelsea Merita.
Alderman from 27th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest 27th Ward constituent Rachel Johns. Thanks.
Alderman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would also like to recognize the 6th Ward Committee woman, Ms. Ollie Stewart. Thanks.
Alderman from the 18th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to have recognized as my special guest Mr. Ronald Stamps, longtime 18th Ward resident.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm surprised, but that's nothing unusual. My wife Cindy is here today, so she is my special guest. Our kids are in school. I understand that the committee woman of the 20th Ward, Democratic Committee woman Lorraine Ura is here. Deanna Cecil is here. And I'm sure that I'm missing other people, but I want to recognize them. One of the last times during a meeting that my wife was here, we had a whole big redistricting thing, so I don't know if there's a sign to that.
No, thanks. Let's welcome.
I didn't see this. No one told me they were coming. Dale Sweet, who's the Democratic committeeman from the 20th Ward, is here as well.
Welcome. Alderman from the 10th, you'd like to wrap us up? Announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As we gather here on April 20th, it was on this day in 1904 that the Louisiana Purchase Exposition had its opening ceremony, and I am proud to have as my guest the man who stood next to Mayor Wells and cut the ribbon, Mr. Fred Steffen.
Welcome, Fred. Alderman from the, with that, I'll suspend our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution calendar. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar and take a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Alderman from the 23rd, you'd just like to approach the dais.
I would like to have Craig, Alderman from the 20th, if he would come up to the dais. I guess it's not a surprise to anybody. This is Craig's last day, and what's a surprise? I shouldn't say it's a surprise to Craig, but we wrote a resolution honoring Craig. We have a copy. I got it in bigger letters so I can see it, but it says on April the 18th, 1995, Craig, a longtime resident of the Marie Villa neighborhood, was sworn in as alderman of the 10th Ward, and whereas Craig attended Mount Pleasant Elementary School, Cleveland High School, and St. Louis University, whereas he graduated with a B.A. magna cum laude and a J.D. cum laude from St. Louis University School of Law. Craig has a lifelong commitment to education, never missing or declining an invitation to speak to youth groups, students, or foreign ambassadors that visit us here at City Hall. The City of St. Louis considers the office of alderman a part-time position. Craig spends over 50 hours a week just taking care of routine business in his ward. In addition to his long office hours, Craig attends countless neighborhood meetings, writes letters to slum landlords, allocates block grant funds, and drafts legislation, and he had helped me with some. Craig Schmidt served as the alderman of the 20th Ward since 2003. Prior to that, he served as the alderman of the 10th Ward from 1995 to 2003. And when the 10th Ward was moved after redistricting, he was dedicated to his new constituents as well as the residents in his ward. He answered calls, worked with the NSO, neighborhood organizations, and attended meetings in both wards for over a year before becoming reelected, or before being reelected as the 20th Ward Alderman. As a public servant, Craig was actively involved in city services, improving homes, economic, human development, educational opportunities, crime and public safety, and seeking enforcement of quality of life issues. Craig, and I'm not going to read all these because he was on like all these different things that he was involved in the neighborhood, but up here, more recently, Craig has served on the legislation committee, chairman of Health and Human Services, intergovernmental affairs vice chair, but it was never uncommon, and we know this, to see Craig at Ways and Means, neighborhood development, public safety, public utilities, and streets to testify on bills that he was passionate about. Craig is he's a favorite of the staff and employees of the City of St. Louis due to his countless hours he spends in the office. Craig always participates in the City Employment Appreciation Barbecue, not only donating funds, but serving employees with sincerity and appreciation. He entertains us at Christmas parties with his trumpet. I don't know if it was entertainment but it says it here. He joins the gang in the lunchroom, and he talks to them about legislative issues while they're eating. And Craig always enjoys giving thoughtful St. Louis-style gifts to the entire staff for Christmas and for employment appreciations, and he will be truly missed. The Board of Aldermen, the staff, Craig's many, many friends, and he has many, at City Hall wish him, his wife Cindy, his daughters Emily and Sarah nothing but the best in their future, and I do too.
But you were wishing me nothing.
Nothing but the best.
I just reminded Craig that there's going to be some additional comments coming, because I imagine everyone out here has some kind words to say. Craig has been a phenomenal leader. He's been a phenomenal public servant to the city of St. Louis. And I'll reserve my comments for a little bit later so that we can get through a few people here. Alderman from the 14th.
I would just like to commend former Alderman Craig Schmidt on his service to the city. He's been a steady, stalwart representative for the city of St. Louis. He was a mentor to me. He's given me a lot of information about how to perform my job. I respect him and honor him, and I wish him the best in his future endeavors. I'm sure he will be successful in whatever he does. Thank you so much, Craig.
Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've known Craig for quite a while, as long as I've lived in the city, actually. Craig and I have both been very active in the Dutchtown South Community Corporation. Even before I was elected alderman, I served on the board there. Craig actually had the dubious distinction of running the organization for a while, even before I moved into the city, and has always been a volunteer for as long as I know, and probably as long as many of the residents of the Dutchtown neighborhood know. Craig's been very involved with that organization. Craig is very well known in the neighborhood. He's been as Carol mentioned, a stalwart down here, and has just been a wealth of institutional knowledge for me since I've come down to the Board of Aldermen, with both history and legal perspective on things, and that will definitely be missed, Craig. I'm sure that you are still going to be active in the neighborhood, as you were even before you were elected, and so I'm sure I'll see you around the Dutchtown area, and I look forward to working with you in whatever capacity you end up doing, and maintaining our friendship. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Alderman from 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Alderman Schmidt, it's been a pleasure working with you the last 4 years. We've known each other way longer than that. I can attest to, as the alderman, every week I would see Alderman Schmidt out in his area along Chippewa, Jefferson, pulling a plastic trash can behind him, picking up all the litter on the streets. So I would always pull over and give him a little kidding about that, but it was neat to see that because he took it very serious. One thing about Alderman Schmidt, any committees he was on or chaired, he really did his homework. He had great questions. Just to watch Craig operate, you just learned a lot of things from that, and I'm thankful for that. You've taught me a lot listening to you as chairman on committees and speak, and you're one person that really does your homework instead of just sitting there. You did a great job in the 20th Ward and the 10th Ward, and I'm sure your constituents are proud of you. And whatever you do, Alderman Schmidt, you're always going to be successful at. So best of luck to you and your family. Thank you.
Alderman from 8th.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I've enjoyed working with Craig. And, sometimes when I disagree with people down here, you do get the wrath of my tongue. And I was thinking back in those 20 years, the only time I could remember is when we were doing the boombox ordinance or the noise ordinance. And I think the President, Reed, made me go back to my microphone because I was trying to demonstrate, and I don't need a microphone, how far 75 feet is. But what I had found, both in that piece of legislation and all of my other dealings, whether we agreed on the issue or not, is that Alderman Schmidt was truly firmly planted in his convictions on whatever side or whatever position he took. It was never, ever for political reasons down here. And I respect that and I admire that each of us operate in a different way. And when he pulled out that French horn on Christmas one year, I was just utterly shocked. But I know that the residents in his ward were well served, the 20th and the 10th ward over the years, because he truly did care about people. He cared about the issues that he represented, and he had a very, very good demeanor in the way that he presented himself to us and represented the issues and represented the people in his ward. And you don't see that every day with people. And sometimes those traits that we all aspire to achieve are not necessarily the best traits of a politician. And I know that you had a tough election that last time, and those were issues that were beyond your control. But the years that you spent down here, I've learned a lot by your demeanor and your approach, and maybe the next 4 years I'll be a little bit mellower. Thank you for being here.
We're going to hold you to that, Alderman from the 8th. We're going to hold you to Alderman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Craig Schmidt, I've known you many years. I first met you through the St. Louis Public School System. You are a great ambassador on behalf of children and the opportunity for them to have an equal access to quality education. You've always been a supporter, and I know that you will continue to be. And once I realized that you were so analytical in your thinking, it was very impressive to me. I like challenges. So I always enjoyed you when you spoke here on the floor. A lot of times you were playing devil's advocate, and I know that, because you wanted the conversation to be spurred in a more fluid and thorough way, and I appreciate that too. As you move forward in your life, I know that you will always be there for the underdog. I know that you will always have that caring spirit that you have. And I do appreciate that, and I thank you on behalf of the citizens and most especially our children of public education.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Craig, we've been sitting next to each other for 12 years.
Is that who that was?
And I'm so going to miss that when we were discussing legislation and it could get hot down here and heated, you and I could sit and discuss them, and we would go back and forth on just looking at it from a perspective of how does it impact overall the city. So I will very much miss having these conversations between us. But the other part of being an elected official is that we attend a lot of events, and we bring our spouses to those events. And my husband wants to send his sincere appreciation of your wife, because when we abandon them at our events, our spouses have to hang out with each other. And so he said, it was great getting to know you. Congratulations. And you're going to do great. You are going to do great. You've done great for the city. I see great things coming your way. Thank you.
Alderman from 13th.
President, members of the board, I said I am sorry to say I will not get to work with you for a long time as an alderman. Very short time, but I know you well by reputation and would see you at many events. And I was always appreciative of how supportive Craig was of the Democratic Central Committee and the party values. I was there from '96, and you could always count on Craig to be there and support us in whatever it was we did. And I appreciate that, and I wish him the best. And I hope we see you down here real soon.
Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to add to the chorus of compliments. The Alderman from the 20th has always struck me as a very smart, intelligent, insightful man, hardworking, and tremendously humble. You know, but I think the trait that I will most recognize and carry with me for the time I've gotten to serve with him is his independence. There's so many different fractions we have in politics sometimes, and people align themselves with caucuses and groups. But Alderman Schmidt was always an independent soul. And you can never guess how he was going to be on an issue just because of his demographic or what side of town he was on. He always gave a lot of time to think about the issue and vote with his heart. And so it is with great sadness that we see him go, but I appreciate the time we've had with you. Thank you.
Alderman from 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Just to add my congratulations to the years of dedicated service from the Alderman from the 20th. I think just an example that hits very close to home. This past Saturday morning was a nice spring morning, and the Alderman from the 9th and I showed up at a small business gathering up on Merrimack Street by St. Anthony's, and the Alderman from the 20th was there. We all know how much we like going places on Saturday morning, and I think it's just a real personal reflection on the work ethic that this gentleman possesses. I certainly didn't always agree with him, nor I, but I think it's extremely important we realize, to put this in perspective, that this business we're in, if we can call it a business, there's absolutely no justice in it. I don't think anybody could have worked harder, spent more time here, or did a better job than the gentleman that's retiring this morning. So we all need to keep that in the back of our mind. You just got to keep counterpunching. But he didn't do anything wrong. Matter of fact, he did everything right. And for some reason, whatever it may be, that's just the way that politics is. I look forward to working with his successor, but he will be sorely missed here because he certainly gave new meaning to what I think is aldermanic work ethic, and I'm deeply appreciative for having served with him. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Craig, I've learned a lot from you over the years, and I really appreciate the conversations that we've had about various subjects. You have a very professional and caring demeanor, and I have never seen you not be respectful of the folks that you serve or any of us here at the Board of Aldermen. And I think that is a real accomplishment that you should be proud of. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. And by thoughtfulness, I mean, yes, you are thoughtful to other people. But what I really mean here is how you think about things, how you think things through. I think you're very thoughtful in your deliberations. And I guess finally what I see is that you care very deeply about people and that you care very deeply about issues and trying to come to the right answer. So I appreciate all the hard work that you've done here. I've enjoyed serving with you very much. And I know that you will do well, and I look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you, Craig.
Alderman from the 18th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board. I have enjoyed your being here and having the opportunity to work with the Alderman from the 20th. Did we agree on every issue? Of course not. I don't agree with everything with my twin brother, and that's a guy I've known since before we were both born. Have we agreed? No. What I've had the opportunity to do, and I'm surprised no one else has said that, unless he just shared it to me, is that wild sense of humor that he has. Mm-hmm. In the middle of a very hot session, he'd walk over to me and say something just completely out the box that would have me laughing and trying to control myself so that I wouldn't look completely insane in the public. He has a sense of humor. Have I learned some things from him? Certainly I have. He taught me how to keep an office. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was called a sleeper. It sneaks up on you. He has done well, and he has been fun to work with. We've had the opportunity to talk about all kinds of issues. And you know, we had also the opportunity to know each other before either one of us was an alderman. And so it's very clear to me about your ongoing concern and care for this community and people in general. That is both a gift and a blessing. Does that mean that everyone will agree with what you do? No. But your heart is for people, and your heart is trying to bring about something that is just in this community. And so in that way, you bring a spirit that the city of St. Louis needs. I congratulate you on the work that you have done. I thank your family for giving him time to share it with the rest of us in the city of St. Louis. And I encourage you to enjoy whatever your next endeavors will be, because for you, that's all kinds of stuff on behalf of this city. Thank you for your service.
Alderman from 9th.
I've been trying to wait till last, but I know the president's always got the last spot. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I have to ditto all the comments that have been made. But just a little story early in my career, which was pretty early in Craig's career also. He lives in the Marine Villa neighborhood. And back when I acquired that in redistricting, which is like 14 years ago, they didn't have an active neighborhood association. So the alderman of the 20th went the extra step and became the president, or organized the neighborhood association and became the president and ran it to where I think there were about 6 or 8 people to start with, and kind of grew it. And then as some of our younger constituents moved in, you know, the comments would come out, well, an alderman shouldn't be the president of a neighborhood association. But I think sometimes what they don't look at is the history, to where if it weren't for the alderman doing what he did, they wouldn't have a neighborhood association. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've always watched Craig. I've always surrounded Craig ward-wise. And, I mean, I could never figure out how you attend all the meetings that you attend. Cindy, I don't know, you know, you're going to have to cuff him at home sometimes, you know. And then the many nights that, you know, I might go to a ball game and come back and your car's still out in the parking lot, so I know you're up in your office still researching something, and some of the comments were made about all the research that you do. And you have always done your homework, and I think a lot of us appreciate it. I think one time I saw you picking up trash on South Broadway close to your house, and I offered you a pair of leather gloves, which you refused, but I mean, I would just wonder how many pairs of leather gloves that you've worn out. And not only on your part where you live, but also the planter that's at Chippewa, Broadway, and Jefferson, and Turtle Park. I mean, and all the parks, and Marquette Park. I mean, if you drive around, you know, you're going to see Craig out there somewhere at some time, whether it's in the street or an alley. There's not too many people that are, and I don't want to say aldermen, I mean actual people that are as dedicated as Craig is, not only as an alderman, but, you know, as a person. And I've always appreciated working with you and listening to your strategy, opinions, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's another point of view, and I wish you the best in the future.
Any further discussion? Further discussion. Alderman from the 4th.
Should I sit down?
Must have been Terry King. I only have one thing to say to you.
Yes, sir.
You may reply.
Oh, no.
Smith! Any further discussion? Alderman from the 10th. And,
I mean, you're taller and older. You want to go first? Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Craig. At first, when I saw all the TV cameras here, I was wondering if they'd actually had found Jimmy Hoffa in your office as you cleaned it out. but then I remember there's some other things they're down here for today. But I did have the pleasure of having Craig for my alderman for a short time. And in all sincerity, he gave me a fine example that I've tried to follow. And you'll be sorely missed. Craig will miss you. Thank you.
Any Alderman from the 17th?
I too just wanted to rise and comment on Craig's great career down here. 20 years he's done a lot of important things, including handling a number of pieces of legislation, being chief sponsor on a number of them that were very controversial and frankly probably politically damaging, but were really very good for the city. And sometimes you alienate people just by doing your job, and I think Craig occasionally did that, and it was courageous to have done that, and I think he served very admirably for a long time. I guess the thing that stands out perhaps most, though, is his comments during debate. I found that I was frequently in disagreement with Craig. However, when he would articulate his reasoning, despite my disagreement, it was always well thought out and logical and defendable, and I always left that, on this issue it's something that gentlemen can disagree on, and I thought he articulated his position very, very well over the years. Craig, we'll all miss you, I'm sure.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Craig, I always get uncomfortable with saying your last name. I hear people say Schmid, and I hear some people say Schmidt. So which one is it? Schmid. Okay. You have been one of the coolest cucumbers down here. I think you probably have put in more service order requests than any other alderman down here. You have been respectful, honest. I always look forward to hearing your opinion because you always were just diligent in your job. I was very honored. You may not notice that you made me your vice chair. For the first time, I was a vice chair, and I appreciate that. And I'm taking health and human services, so I hope I do the same job that you did. You were probably one of the only aldermen that I craved to cut their hair. I always wanted to fix that thing that was falling in your face. Next to Alderman Conway over here, because I'm always fixing his hair. But you were one of the most hard-working aldermen down here. I hate to see you go. I hope I can only be an example, of you, what I've learned from you. And I know I don't always have a cool head, even though that's why I don't get up at the floor too much, because I know sometimes I get a little emotional. And but you have taught me how to try to keep a better disposition in committee hearings when things are heated and on this floor. And I really respect you. And I hope you and wish you have good luck in your future. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I also want to I think we should just take a moment and thank the alderman's wife and family, because I know that on Saturday mornings, a lot of times when I'm driving down Jefferson, I get down near Jefferson, Cherokee like clockwork. That's if you're out there early enough. You'll see the alderman walking up and down Jefferson, near Jefferson, Cherokee, picking up trash, putting it in the bag. I mean, he has been an incredible public servant. But that comes with a cost. It comes with a cost to your family. All of you know how much time it takes out of your household. If you multiply that times 10, you'll get a glimpse at what it has cost his family over the years. Because it has not been, I would imagine it has not been easy, the level of commitment this man has brought to the job. Because he has been the consummate public servant. He's been an incredible public servant. Let's all stand and give his wife and kids a round of applause to show them how much the city of St. Louis thanks and appreciates them. It's been a request that we make this resolution in bank. I entertain a motion.
Does that mean my name is on it?
Yeah. See, that's what Terry was talking about. It's been moved. It's moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 4th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Craig, thank you so much for the time that you spent at the Board of Aldermen. Thank you so much for what you've done. One of the things that I heard a bunch of people say today, they talked about your involvement with youth and your involvement with kids and how much you reached out and how much you were able to connect to them. And that is exactly right. Every time we would have kids down at this Board of Aldermen, even if it was at the last moment and he was heading out, getting ready to go do something else, he'd stop, come back in here, and he would spend all the time it took with the kids. And that is, I think, commendable, obviously, but also we should be thankful for that type of commitment. So it exceeded beyond just the boundaries of his neighborhood, beyond just picking up trash up and down the boulevards and stuff. He made sure he was involved in this city, and he wanted to give something back, so we cannot thank you enough for that. Let's give the Alderman one more round of applause, and then we're going to bring him up for a couple words. Another joke he did.
Thank you. I was afraid that there might be something like this. You know, this seems surreal. It's very strange because frequently I would stand up. The last time I stood up on the floor and reflected on Alderwoman Young's departure and how I missed those who've gone and all their wisdom. I mentioned to the President that it sounded like a eulogy. I'm thankful for all of your kind remarks, and it's good for my wife to hear them. Because most of the phone calls that come to the house are not quite as complimentary. So I did write down some thoughts, as you thought I might, since I've got the microphone in front of me, and it might be a little long, but if you'll indulge me. Why can't we get all the people in the world together that we really like and then just stay together? I guess that wouldn't work. Someone would leave, someone always leaves, and then we would have to say goodbye. I hate goodbyes. I know what I need. I need more hellos. And so that was said or written by Charles Schultz. I've been blessed by the people of the 10th, old and new, Alderman Baumer, and the new 20th, Alderwoman Tyus. All of that is a long story. And my family and friends who've had to put up with me during this journey for 20 years. 20 years as a public servant, doing the people's business with, some say, passion and tenacity, sometimes to the exclusion of all else. I'm grateful to all of you for your sparring, Alderman Conway, and for your help, all of you. We serve at the will of the people. And this vocation, this mission is one that is truly not about us. Now, my wife gave me this some time ago, and some of you might have been wondering about it, but this has been on my desk. I don't remember how long, 15 years? At least. So what it reminds me, what's his name, is that it's truly not about us. I could recount many stories, as we all could, about this service that is very meaningful to me, but I won't. But there's a couple of reflections from others that I thought I might share with you. All progress is precarious, and the solution of one problem brings us face to face with another problem. Does that sound familiar? You live it, as did Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who both lived it and said it. He went on to say that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. No llores porque usted se terminó, sonríe para usted, is it? Porque sucedió. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And that's from Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss. I wanted a perfect ending, and now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme, and some stories don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Life is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment and making the best of it without knowing what is going to happen next. Gilda Radner. At the risk of going on too long, as I said, if you will, again, indulge me because I have the floor. Here's a poem that I like, and I hope that it reflects how we make choices. How we make choices and take action that is less political and more people's work driven, as all of you on this floor, I know, do every day. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I saved the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And so in a shameless commercial plug, my term is over, and I'm out of work. So if you know anyone hiring a talented, passionate, caring, tenacious worker, I now have, this video that I can share with them. Please let me know. I am available. Let me leave you finally with a prayer from a former Archbishop of El Salvador and a martyr, Archbishop Oscar Romero. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer, even the one at the beginning today, fully expresses our faith. No program accomplishes the whole mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for God's grace to enter and to do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. I appreciate all the help that everyone has given to me to help in some small way my neighbors, your neighbors, and the great citizens of the greatest city on the face of the earth, the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Hold on. Oh, ask if anybody else wants to come up and get
Can we have the members of the Board of Aldermen, if you guys would like to come up real quick, let's get a... Tell you what, that was...
Let me go out there. I'm going to go in front of you. Too tall to be in the back.
No, that's where I need to be in the back. Blue's always supposed to be in the back.
Let us tall people get back.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. With that, we'll return to our regular order of business. We will dispense with line items 5 through 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We will dispense with line items 8 through 16. Third reading consent calendar.
Board Bill 219.
Ms. Mortar, third reading consent.
Board Bill 219.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on a motion for third reading consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading final passage calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Balmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Howard.
You have to
Alderwoman
vote
Howard.
aye.
26 aye votes, 1 present.
By vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 18th and third read and finally pass the aforementioned bill.
That's the extent of third reading consent.
Third reading report of engrossments.
Board Bill 208, committee substitute sponsored by aldermen and alderwomen. French, Kennedy, President Reed, Davis, Williamson, Carter, Hubbard, Moore, Bosley, Flowers, Young, Ingracia, Mayor Slay, Schmid, Cruzen, Conway, Green, Ogilvie, Cone. An ordinance establishing a civilian oversight board and containing a severability clause.
Alderman, please state your point of order.
What's the limit on the number of lobbyists on the floor of the Board of Aldermen at one time?
I don't think we have a limit on the number, but we do have a specific areas that they're supposed to stand. They aren't supposed to lobby people during the course of the meeting. If you've seen any of that or if any of that is happening, please let me know so we can fix it right now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. To that end, if there are any lobbyists out there that are, moving outside the designated areas, you can be on this side, on that side. There's seating available for you. And if you have not been recognized to be on the floor today, then you have to exit the floor. There is a room over here you can go. There's also the gallery that you can go stand in the gallery. It's also. It's been moved by the alderman from the 21st. Please go ahead.
Mr. President, I move that we third read and finally pass Board Bill 208, committee substitute.
Moved by the alderman from the 21st, seconded by the alderman from the 18th. Alderman, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board Bill 208 represents many years of work on behalf of lots of different folks. Many of them are here in this room today. This establishes a civilian review board or civilian oversight board in the city of St. Louis. This hopefully will be one step further to reestablishing trust between the community and the police department, establishing a second layer of accountability where people can take complaints about potential police abuse. It does not go as far as some people would like it to go, myself included. It goes farther than others would like it to go. Some people think it goes too far. Some people think it falls short of what we actually need at this time in our history in St. Louis. But what it represents is a compromise. It's what we can pass right now, and it's something that we can build upon. It is a step in the right direction. And it is this board's attempt to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is a good step in the right direction, and hopefully it would be built upon for many years to come. So with that, I am open to questions.
All right. Any discussion? Alderman from the first.
I wanted to continue on the Alderman from the 24th point of order. You made a statement that I am unfamiliar with. You said that there's a place where the lobbyists are supposed to stand. I would like to know where that is.
Yes, it's to the right and to the left of the chambers. They do not supposed to get within this area of the
So that
chair.
corner over there and that corner over there?
Yes,
That's the lobbyist corner.
because we're over full today because of what's going on, so we're allowing them to occupy those two corners also.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
I rise in opposition to this piece of legislation. I went online and read that I was the only black alderman one supporting it, and it was only because that I wanted it to have subpoena power. I always hate it when people speak for me because I can speak for myself and I can speak for the people that I represent, and I make my own positions known. So please stop posting what Sharon Tyus thinks if you don't know what Sharon Tyus thinks and you haven't talked to me. Don't let any other person tell you what my position is. I do think that there should be subpoena power, but there's something much more obvious to me that I am opposed to. I've been opposed to it for the police. We say we're opposed to it for the police, and then we put the same thing in this bill, which is that conflict of interest. I was fortunate enough to finally have a police chief. A few months ago, Dotson asked him a question about conflict of interest after one of the shootings, and he talked about that they were going to have the circuit attorney's office investigate the shooting. And I said to him, you know, I've been a public defender, I've tried cases, I've had police on the stand. You guys do all of the investigation for the circuit attorney. Yes, told him about an instance when I was a public defender and George Peach was then the circuit attorney, and he talked about bringing some charges, and there became this whole rumor of blue flu if he did bring charges against the police, and it didn't happen. And so we always knew as public defenders that it was a conflict of interest, because anytime the police wanted to, all they had to do was stop investigating the way they should for the circuit attorney's office, and then you don't have any cases. So we knew that always we used to push for there be an independent investigation that did not involve the police, that when the police had a shooting or something like that, that you bring in something or some other entity. And now they are talking about trying to get the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, but somebody that you don't have to try cases for, you don't have to do the investigation, because that makes it too hard for a circuit attorney to then have to go around and investigate themselves, basically. And so in looking through this bill and reading it, one of the things that I find circuitous and conflicting, along with the fact that I agree with the alderman from the 11th about the mayor's name being on it, and then also that we don't have an Alderman Young from the 7th, and that name should be taken off of it, is that this whole thing about, let's go to the, what page is it on? About the whole Civilian Review Board, and then its director. In the whole round argument, the director of the executive director of the Civilian Review Board comes from the. So I'm trying to understand this. The mayor appoints the public safety director. The executive, and maybe I can understand this from the alderman from the 21st. So the mayor appoints the the public safety director. The COB executive director is appointed by. Am I understanding this right? That person is appointed by the director of the public safety. I'm sorry, Ms. Alderman from the 21st. Will you yield? I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I will.
But hold on. It doesn't go that way either. You have to request it from me, and then I'll talk to
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I requested the Alderman from the 21st year.
Alderman from the 21st, will you yield for questioning to the Alderwoman from the 1st?
I do.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
So the mayor appoints the public safety director. Then the Citizens Review Board, we have what's called a COB, executive director. That person is appointed by the public safety director?
Correct. It is a employee of the Public Safety Department.
Okay. And then the staff for the Citizens Review Board also comes from the public safety
As written,
employee.
Yes.
So I don't see the point. That's a very circular thing in that we're having the investigator investigate. That's the same thing we talked about the police and that they're doing, yet here we are writing legislation that does the same thing. It gives the investigation ultimately over to the public safety director. Okay. So that was, I want people to know, I don't like conflicts of interest. I don't like them in any form or shape. All the time I've been down here, there's many times people have offered things to my husband, his friends, and I always say no, and they say, why you say no? I say that's an appearance of impropriety, or that's a actual conflict of interest. This is not any kind of an independent board when you have it going back to the public safety director. I just never understood that. As I read through this bill, I looked at page 5 of 26, and it talks about, and page 4 of 26, it talks about independent inquiry and about the members of the Citizen Review Board asking for physical evidence and other things to investigate. So if they ask for evidence and we don't have subpoena power, then what happens if the people refuse?
This question to me?
Yes.
So this board does not have subpoena power. They can only request that information from the chief and from the Civil Service Commission.
And so what if they refuse to give it to them?
That is an issue.
And so,
Alderwoman, you might recall that in the last committee hearing when we discussed this thing, I stood for 3 hours and pointed out all the issues that I would have liked to have seen strengthened in this.
I understand.
And I share your concern with the amount of independence this board has from the executive branch, and I would hope that those are things would be strengthened at a later time.
No, it's not my concern. It has none, zero. When you have the person who is directly appointed by the mayor being in charge of it, and then his staff, because we all know down here at the Board of Aldermen, we can request stuff. If the people don't want to, unless we can go to a committee meeting and put subpoena power, they just ignore your request. Remember how many times you requested information from the street director that I finally got, but you kept asking for it? So if we have a Citizens Review Board that is staffed by the public safety director, if he says we don't have time, we don't get to that, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, that's an appearance that we have something that we don't. So there's absolutely no autonomy at all. I'm not talking about a little bit. I'm saying this is the very conflict of interest that we talked about with the police and the circuit attorney's office that we are creating in this legislation, okay? So when they refuse, if they don't want to do it, there's nothing that this Citizens Review Board can do. Is that correct?
Presently, no.
Okay, so, and that's if they ask for a reconsideration request or anything like that. All they can do is request.
Just request.
Okay, and if the public safety director says that his staff members don't have enough time to do whatever, then there's nothing that the Citizens Review Board can do about that?
Well, I guess theoretically they could sue, but they do not have authority to directly subpoena or demand it.
And where would they get the money to sue? So the budget comes from the Public Safety Department.
Right.
And they have to talk to the city councilor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alderman, I know that, I'm just saying you're carrying this, so I have to ask you these questions because people putting out misinformation about what my position is, and my position is write good legislation, and that this is not. Alderman, I pulled up the mayor's executive order number 38, which is the Civilian Review Board, that was signed into law or signed into not really law, but the executive order. He affixed the seal of the city of St. Louis on the 30th day of March 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And that was to set up a civilian review board in 2006.
Right.
And I can't remember when you came down here. Since you've been down here, have you seen any existence of a civilian review board?
I have not, and I remember I was following that when it was happening, and that was in response to this board previously passing a civilian review board bill, which was vetoed, and then that was created.
It was created.
Never created.
Exactly. And in its creation, it almost has exact language, almost everything pretty much that's in this civilian review board here. This is what the mayor said, that he would go along with this right here, okay? And I requested from the city councilor, because there was an opinion that I was told that was floating around. So before we went down months ago, I requested from the city councilor, I wanted a copy of that opinion. I still don't have a copy of that opinion, because I talked to our former attorney here at the board who had a difference of opinion, and from what I had heard, I know that that opinion was not correct, okay? And sometimes the city councilors think they work for the mayor instead of the city of St. Louis. They just don't get it that they work for the city of St. Louis. So I asked for that opinion because I wanted to try to understand, because one of the things I read is that the mayor said he would not support, he didn't support the last one, and he wouldn't support an elected board. And my question was, why wouldn't you support an elected board? We're all elected, so I didn't understand that. But I couldn't get my answers because just did not supply the records. When I have an actual piece of legislation that I'm coming back with this new term, saying that when we ask the city councilors and other people for things, and especially city councilors, that ought to be provided to this Board of Aldermen within a week at the longest, okay? That's really too long, that we have a right to look at city councilors' opinion, and either our attorney should get it or they should provide it, but just not to give it to it is ridiculous to me. The other question that I have is, how were these districts put together? Who decided what districts would be who and where?
I think those districts are put together after some discussion between the proponents of the Civilian Oversight Board and the mayor's office. And again, it reflects kind of a geographic continuity and some compromise.
Well, they're actually the same exact districts that the mayor had in his executive order back in 2006. And so it didn't seem to, the alderman from the 4th and I don't feel like that there was a compromise at all about where the district should be. And it seemed to be made up so that the mayor could cherry pick if there were some people that were proposed from his allies versus people who would have a difference. That also makes me concerned, because if you're cherry picking from your allies, then you don't have an even less independent board, and which would challenge things.
And I don't disagree with that. It's one of those things that we discussed in committee.
Okay, going to page 8 of 26, section 6, talked about terms of office. And one of the things of the terms of office was that after the initial term you would have so many, and that no member may serve more than 2 consecutive terms. So I guess my question, some of these things, this is something that can be tightened up, I guess. If someone comes in at a half term of, say, somebody they replace, is that counted as a term currently, or is that a half term and then is it 2 full terms they cannot serve, or how does that work? Since you're sponsoring the legislation.
That's a good question. I think it would. I would think that it would mean that even that partial term would be a term.
So if you did 3 months, that would be your term? I
would think so, unless that's tightened up later.
Okay. And also, I've said this before, I think that I would have loved to see something. Another reason I'm opposed to this bill is because I don't think that the mayor had to appoint every person. One of the things we've done in other things is that, and I'll use LRA, comptroller has an appointment, some other people. So I would have supported something in which the president of the board had something, the comptroller, some other people have something to do with not just the police, but the money issues and the other things. I think that when you just make it all go back to the mayor, and that is too much, that again, and it's a circular argument. I don't understand why we're doing this since the mayor put this executive order, why he didn't just put this into effect so we could see how this worked. Then we would have seen all the kinks and the things that don't work. And then maybe we wouldn't be so hurried to say we're going to get this passed, because ultimately it is the exact same thing and gives the exact same power back to the mayor under this executive order. And obviously, I don't understand why he has his name on it. He didn't do anything with this one that he did in 2006. So why put your name on legislation at the Board of Aldermen, unless, of course, you're coming back over there to sit where Craig Schmidt sits, because that's where the mayor used to sit when I came here. Unless you're coming back and sitting at the Board of Aldermen, then why have your name on this legislation unless this is fluff? This is trying to act like you're doing something when you already had this in effect and you did absolutely nothing with it. It wasn't a good piece of legislation. Well, it wasn't legislation. It wasn't a good executive order. And then for us to go behind and to put this in writing and say, well, we got something. We don't have anything that we did not have under this executive order. This is just making us look like that we're a rubber stamp, and we should not be a rubber stamp. The alderman from the 11th shared with me when I got in here today some things about the North Side regeneration, which I was adamantly opposed to. The alderman from the 11th voted now. Told you so. Everything we told you is just what we said. And when you read that article about the things that people don't do to follow up, it's embarrassing. I didn't ask if he was in bankruptcy. I didn't ask this. I didn't ask that. But yet we went about eminent domain on people's houses based on a person who's not asking questions. And that is what... Please state your point of order, Alderman.
The alderman is off subject.
I'm not an alderman. Point of order.
We're talking about the CLB.
All right. Alderwoman from the first, please keep your comments germane to the subject.
It was germane to say the reason why I was talking about that is that here we go again. This is what we're doing again, that we continue to just follow up and point and run behind something. And again, when we already have had something that's supposed to be an executive order for what? This was 2006, it's 2015. How many years is that? 9 years? Okay, we had 9 years and absolutely nothing has happened. This all was the same thing. We're not being serious about our civilian review. What we're doing is placating the public so we can tell them, well, we got something. But obviously, the devil is always in the details. And so when you start trying to implement this, for the people who really want a civilian review board, you're not going to get what you think you're getting. You're going to get something that is run by the mayor, by his appointee, that he, at will, cannot, and does not have to put any money in there to have a budget, or they'll say we don't have enough money. We got rid of our police board that the governor appointed. Now we don't have a police board. Since I've been back here, we had the president or the chair of public safety be able to be in charge of it, the one that left from the 7th, and she prevented the public from even asking questions. The alderman from the 21st, you are very familiar with the alderwoman, the former alderwoman from the 7th, not letting people ask questions and limiting the amount of questions that the people on the committee. Right now, I see in this piece of legislation they talk about a commissioner. Is the police chief now currently the commissioner, or is that anticipated that we're going to have a police commissioner at some point? Do you know that?
Under local control, the police chief is actually the commissioner.
Okay.
We just still call him the chief.
And we have no police board at all now.
Correct.
And right now, under local control, we do not have a means for the public to address the police like they used to be able to do when we had a police board.
Correct, but I do believe the Public Safety Committee is going to start calling the chief in on a regular basis.
For the public to ask questions.
I don't think the rules have been established yet on how those meetings will be handled, but I think that's a step in the right direction of getting him in to speak to the public. But then that would also depend on who was the chair of public safety, because if we get another chair of public safety who decides it's not a good idea, that may not happen.
Is that correct?
Correct. It's not written in the rules yet.
So the public right now doesn't have a right, like they did back when we had a board, to be able to come to a meeting on a monthly set time and ask questions.
Correct.
Because we rushed into getting rid of something that was going to be better. And it ended up not being better, except for that the mayor has more control, which I haven't found that to be a good thing for the people where I live. The mayor having more control doesn't equal having better services, safer city. Let's see. Okay, I'm looking here on page 11 of 26, number 6, rules. The COB shall by majority vote and after consulting with the Director of Public Safety adopt rules and procedures that prescribe operating procedures regarding its meeting and its administrative protocol. If this is supposed to be a semi-independent board, why does the COB have to consult with the Director of Public Safety about its rules and procedures?
Is that a question to me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with your categorization. It is not as independent as I would like to have seen it.
No. But now I'm trying to get to semi-independent. This is something I don't understand. Why would they have to consult with the director? Okay, so we already say the director gets to appoint the director of the board. We already agreed that the director is appointed by the mayor. We already agreed that the staff comes with that the public safety director is going to staff them. But now they can't even adopt rules and procedures without first going to the director of public safety? And I don't understand that.
Well, I think the way it's written is consulting with. They don't have to get approval from the public safety director.
Okay, so they don't have to have approval. They just got to talk to him about that they're going to do it.
That's how I interpret it.
But I would just say I'm offended already. We got so much tight control by the mayor. Why do they have to? Why wouldn't they just be able to make their own rules? Because if they don't have to do what he says, what is the whole point of that?
I don't disagree.
Okay. Let's see here. I want to say I think that's what's really good is number 7, which is the procedures about adopting and establishing a system for internal controls for the development of a case management system. I think that's a very good thing, and I like that. I like number 8 about the manual and training. I think that's very good. I want some questions about the standard of professional conduct for the members of the COB. And are there some standards of professional conduct that are already someplace?
Yes, there's a national association of civilian review boards, and they do have a standard practices for everyone to subscribe to.
And so there's a training program, or will they have to establish a training program?
They would have to establish a training program. I don't know if there's one that the National Association already has that can be adopted, but that would be something that the board would have to decide.
Okay, now, then it says on page 12 of 26, for purposes of these training requirements, COB members shall not be considered volunteers. I read someplace else in the legislation that they could have volunteers to do research and things like that.
Correct.
Is that what they're saying? Is that what that pertains to? Is this something else?
Right. In the legislation, it identifies volunteers and what their roles and responsibility would be, and the volunteers don't have the same level of training or requirements. And so it specifies that the members of the boards do have that extra level of training and requirements.
I like that, again, I'll go in with some good things. I like about the data. I see that you took out the term racial profiling, and I kind of figured out myself why you did that. But can you tell me then, what other profiling have we had a problem with besides racial or young people?
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of different groups that have complained that they are targeted by police based on gender, sexual preference, location, economics.
Okay. Okay, now when we get this data and we analyze it, so that data will be done by the staff and or the volunteers, both, or separate, or who will do this?
The data analysis?
Yes.
Or the data gathering? So the data gathering, it's assumed, is already gathered by
Right, from the
other
board.
organizations. The State Attorney General, for instance, gathers racial profiling data.
Right.
And so this board and its members would have access to that data and can do their independent analysis to see if it is a problem in St. Louis City.
So the analysis would be who? I'm sorry.
The board, the COB, would do the
Okay, not the
analysis.
volunteers, but the board themselves. Or a combination thereof.
So, correct. So the office of the COB, whether that
Okay.
be the members themselves or their staff.
Okay, so now I'm on page 14 talking about these internal audits. So I want to make sure I understand this. The board members will not be paid, is that correct, except for maybe expenses that come up from their pockets?
Correct. They are not paid.
Okay, so when I look at all of this, what we're talking about, this is a full-time job. This is not a small thing that they would be committing to. So says the COB shall perform regular audits of intake procedures, and when you say that, that's the board members will be doing that.
Correct.
Okay.
Or staff.
In their request for staff members, will there be some kind of member who is an accountant or somebody, a statistician or something like that? Is that something that we would be requesting that would be a staff member?
That would be a request that would come from the COB and would have to be included in the Public Safety Department's budget, which is submitted by the Public Safety Director.
Okay, and so we're getting ready to do Ways and Means in a little bit. Do you know, has this been included in the Ways and Means budget or the public safety budget for this upcoming year?
I do not know. They have not turned that over to Ways and Means Committee yet.
Okay. So part of the staff should be known, will there be a separate investigative staff for the COB? Like when I was a public defender, we actually had investigators. Will they have investigators, or will that be part of the staff of public safety who also work in connection with this?
So they could have investigators. That would be determined by the COB members, and it would have to be included in the budget that's submitted by the Public Safety Director. In most cases, though, they would be reviewing the investigation done by Internal Affairs, and then by a majority vote, supermajority vote, in fact, they would have to vote to do an independent investigation if they deemed it appropriate.
So if, again, going back to this Public Safety Director, so if they request an investigator and he doesn't put it in the budget, then they are just out of luck and they don't have it. Is that correct?
Well, if they request and it's not included in the budget, then the members of the Ways and Means Committee could correct that and try to put it in the budget.
We can't add, we can subtract.
We can suggest moving stuff around.
Suggest, but we can't add. So ultimately, if he doesn't put it in, we can suggest all we want to, but we're not allowed to. Thank you, Vince Shamel, because of Geraldine being such a good person, we can't add. So that's what I'm saying. So unless you're willing to take the whole public safety budget away to make him do something, we won't be able to add. And the staff members that the COB has, will they be only their staff member, or will they also do other jobs amongst the public safety department?
That is not spelled out in the ordinance.
So do you have an idea?
I would like to see them have their own staff. I would like them to have as much as independence as possible. But we will have to address that when the budget is submitted.
And will they have office space? And if so, will it be in the Public Safety Director's office?
There's supposed to be a location in City Hall for people to come and make complaints.
Boy, they're important. We're still waiting for the rest of our space at the Board of Aldermen, so that'll be interesting how they can find some space, since the registrars is currently occupying what's supposed to be.
I believe we're about to get that space back.
You think so? And how long does that take?
Too long.
Okay, but so they're supposed to have, but right now they don't have any space assigned?
Space has not been identified in the building yet.
Okay. Okay, and I guess I got a legal question about the being an indemnity. Okay, it says on page 16, line 2 and 3, this ordinance shall not be interpreted to allow the COB or its members any right to indemnity. And can you explain that to me, please? Because usually when you're doing something in your capacity, you're indemnified somewhat. So unless it's something that you personally went above and beyond. So like when I sue this Board of Aldermen about redistricting very soon, these people who voted illegally, they will be indemnified. So why aren't they being covered?
That's a good question. It was included in there, I think, at the request of the City Council's office.
So they serve, and they have to go through all the people who are indemnified, but they actually have no coverage. I think that's kind of lousy. I just want you to know, I think that's really wrong. And should not ask people to come and serve and then they not be covered if something happens, unless they purposely did it and it was something outside their scope of what they're supposed to do. I think that's wrong. I don't know why the City Council would say that, except for that is to me like something they planted that should be rethought.
I don't disagree.
I like this about creating a joint civilian complaint form that's available to the general public. I mean, I think that should have been, but I want to say that I had on occasion when I was off this board to make a complaint about the police, and I actually just sat down and wrote a letter, and it was addressed, and it was said, the current police chief at that time was Dan Isom, and they did do an investigation and found that what I said, because they didn't arrest somebody they were supposed to, and I detailed everything, and then they found that it was warranted and they took appropriate action. But I like having a form because a lot of times people don't know what they should put in something, so I think that's very good. So, and I also I'm understanding on page 17 of 26, the COB will not investigate employment-related complaints against fellow officers or superiors. So what if I'm an officer, because this is what I've found that happens. Sometimes when officers go over that thin blue line, it's not as thin as it used to be. And they're the good officers, and they see something that's wrong. Like I would have liked to see when we saw that thing when the officer went and got that what looked like a taser after he killed the guy and dropped it. I would have liked to see that black officer report him instead of go along as though nothing happened. So are you telling me that if a fellow officer has a complaint about one of his officers that wouldn't go through COB?
No, the way I interpret that is when it says employment-related complaints, that would be things that would normally go to the Civil Service Commission, complaints about assignments, things like that.
Okay, but and maybe it's the IAD. So because one of the things what I want to encourage, there are a lot of good police officers, and they a lot of times get stuck in the middle of being loyal to people that they should not be loyal to, and it makes them look makes people think that everybody's bad. It's like when they talk about politicians when it's a few. Okay, so what about if somebody has a complaint, they're a police officer? Do you see that going through the COB, or is that IED, or who does that go through?
I don't think there's anything to prevent an officer from filing a complaint with the COB. I would think, though, that they would probably go through internal affairs. But even that investigation done by internal affairs would then be reviewable, I think, by COB.
Okay. Okay. So as I'm understanding this process, once IAD, if there's a shooting or something in which there is a investigation, once IAD does the investigation and returns it in to the police chief, then will the Citizens Review Board then be able to get the findings and do their own separate investigation? Is that what you perceive to be?
So the way the process would work is that in an officer-involved shooting, internal affairs would conduct an investigation. After their investigation is completed, those results would be turned over to COB to review. If they felt that Internal Affairs did not do a proper investigation, then they can vote to do an independent investigation.
And once they do that, who do they turn that into?
So COB does not have any authority to discipline officers directly. It will just report its findings and recommendations to the chief and the public safety director.
Okay, and would those findings be made public?
I think so, yes.
But right now, they're not required. I couldn't find it any place in here.
So it doesn't specifically say that they won't be public. And so I would err on the side that it would be public then, if there's nothing preventing it from being public.
Trust everybody, brand all your cows when you're writing legislation. I would err on the side of putting it in legislation and with the words shall be or must included, okay? Because permitted or may gives them an escape clause, okay? So
again, I don't disagree, and when we did our 3-hour hearing on changes I would like to have seen in the bill, that was one of many, but unfortunately we did not have the votes for that.
I understand. Because I see here that it just says it's going to notify the public safety director and the commission. But it's nothing about, the whole point of what I thought this was is so that the public would feel that they were more involved with their police, because the police are part of the public, and they should feel that they're more involved with the police and that this is their city and that the police are here to protect and serve. So if we do these things and we don't do these separate investigations, in which already were blocked because we can't subpoena, okay? So if I'm representing somebody, I'm going to say just don't give it to them. So what are they going to do about it? That's what I'm going to say. Send me a subpoena. You don't send me a subpoena, I'm not giving it to you. What are you going to do about it? Now, let me just give a suggestion that we at the Board of Aldermen have subpoena power. So are we going to do that? Are we going to provide the backup to do subpoena power if they don't give anything? But most certainly if we do not release findings, especially if either if they say, I agree with the investigation and this was a good investigation in our opinion, or we disagree, and I'm not saying use names, this is why we think that this was a mistake. If we don't have a means in which we are assured that the public is going to be informed, it's going to be a mistake to me not to have that. And it's going to end up just like all the other political things, and like this 9-year executive order that we have. For 9 years, an executive order. Nothing's been done, okay? So I know we can amend. These are some things really that I'm talking about that need to be amended. And maybe you won't get the votes. You will see that it won't be any better than this executive order if we don't change some of these things. I'm on page 24 of 26 now, talking about the confidentiality. Talks about markings. When submitting information to each other, the police department and the COB shall place identifying marks on any confidential information or otherwise. I wasn't quite sure what, is that to make sure that it's not released, that there's some kind of mark that says this is confidential, so make sure you don't release that?
Yeah, so if a confidential document was ever let out into the public, it'd be easy to trace where it came from.
Okay, and so will the members, when they are chosen, will they be sworn in under some kind of oath?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and here on page 25 of 26, it talks about any member who is found guilty of unlawful disclosure shall be sanctioned as set forth in the rules. I'm sure that one of them will be removed, but is there something other punishment that goes along with that you know of?
If it's not in the ordinance, it would have to be established by the rules of the board when they adopt their first rules.
Well, it says rules of the board and Missouri statute. So did we anticipate any statutes being introduced and passed, or are there some current statutes that already...
There is a current statute which is referenced on the first page of the bill that allows for the creation of civilian review boards.
Right.
It is not lengthy, but it does give some guidance for members and their accountability.
Okay. So one of the other questions that's just been passed to me is what kind of public hearings will the board be involved with any kind of public hearings for the public, since they're supposed to be representatives for the public?
As a public body, they are bound by the Sunshine Laws, and their meetings would be open to the public.
But I'm saying, so they're going to do investigation, but would they then come out and have hearings or talk to the public about how they work, or take suggestions from the public about how they would like to see them adopt procedures or anything like that? Is that anything that you anticipate?
So for the first point, all their meetings would be public, since it is a public body, and so the public could attend those meetings. Now, whether or not they decide to have hearings just for the sole purpose of receiving public comment, that will be up to the board and its members to decide.
Okay, and so when they have these hearings, they will be posted, and there will be enough time so that the public will know, and how will they be posted, and how will it be spread out to the public to know that they're having hearings?
So as a public body, they abide by the same rules we do under the Sunshine Law, and so they would have to be posted, and same rules that we have.
Well, like ours, we have to post outside we have to be so many hours, and it has to be outside the Board of Aldermen. So you anticipate that they will create something like that where the public can have access to be able to know? Will we put in newspapers or anything like that?
I anticipate that they would establish rules that would keep them in accordance to the Sunshine Law.
But you're not. We don't know specifically what that might be at this time.
That would be adopted in their rules. So we don't prescribe what their rules would be in the ordinance. So it would be up to them.
All right. Thank you, Alderman from the 21st. I appreciate it. As I said before, the subpoena power is but one of the problems that I have with this piece of legislation. The other is that there is absolutely no independence, and it is a conflict of interest for anybody who's looking for a civilian review board that is any type of independent. Every ounce of independence is withdrawn in this. Any kind of thing, even any ounce, is going to the public safety director that's appointed by the mayor. The mayor can decide to appoint which people that you appoint. There is this is the mayor's, this should be called Mayor Slay's civilian review board. And in fact it is. And that is why when I pulled his executive order number 38 that was passed 9 years ago and nothing was done for it, the mayor has no concern about doing a civilian review board. So he ought to be laughing. He should be happy that this, I don't know why he put his name on it, because this is his legislation. And it's not going to work, and it's not going to be what people are looking for. And it'll just be something where we can say we passed something without actually having an effect. Without any kind of subpoena power that you can get things, you can't get information. As a former practicing attorney when I was a public defender, how many times did they falsely accuse people that I represented, but for the fact that I could subpoena the 911 tape or subpoena lots of police to put them on the stand, did I find out what they were saying was not the truth? Without my ability to subpoena them, the truth would not have happened, and people who are walking around free right now that were falsely accused would not be walking around. And so saying that we got something done, yeah, we did. What we have done is mostly the very same thing that the mayor said was an executive order 9 years ago. And nothing was done with that, and nobody asked anything about it. It just sat there. And then with all this stuff that's happened in the last year, now we're up and we're going to do something. And I think it's not fair to the public to try to trick them like this. And maybe some people don't feel like we're tricking them. It will not work. I'm not going to support it. I wouldn't support it without subpoena power. But even if it had subpoena power, if it didn't have any independence, I can't fault the police for them having a conflict of interest. And then I'll pass legislation that has the same conflict of interest. I want to thank Chief Dotson for admitting, I couldn't believe when he admitted that it was a conflict of interest for the circuit attorneys to investigate them. I was like, wow, thank you. Because always before, the police chiefs tried to put it off. And so I can't be hypocritical and say it's conflict for the police to do that, and then we turn around and do the same conflict of interest. And for that and other reasons, including subpoena power and the fact that I don't think that this is going to work or that this is even a halfway decent bill, I will not be supporting it. I will be asking for a roll call. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 23rd.
I have more of a statement. I agree with everything the Alderwoman from the 1st said. I don't believe the bill does what it's intended to do. But I do want to make a point. My son, and I know I say this all the time, but my son and daughter both work in the police department. My son's a homicide detective. To say that the police are opposed to some sort of oversight would be wrong. The police want input on what goes into the bill, but they're not opposed. And I know from talking to my son that they're not opposed to an oversight, but I believe they believe that there's stuff in this bill that conflicts with them. And my understanding is if we pass this, maybe I'm wrong, but I saw in the news this morning the association is going to put it in court. It's going to be tied up where we can actually put this back in play tomorrow and pass something out of here 4 weeks from now that might be more palatable. That's pretty much all. I just wanted to make a statement.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 14th.
President Reed, I agree with many of the points that the alderman from the 1st brought up. This is not good legislation, and I am in agreement with her. Why are we passing legislation that is not going to get us anywhere, that it's just going to bring out more questions than there are answers to? And at this point, I would like to make a motion that we table this.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the 14th that we table this. I'll entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Motion to lay it on the table is a non-debatable motion. A vote in affirmative will mean that this bill will be tabled until further notice, and this is our last meeting, so it will not go further than this. And a vote against it would mean that we would continue on with the bill. So, again, the motion that's before us is to lay on the table the Civilian Oversight Board Bill, Board Bill number 208, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
No.
Alderwoman Behringer. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Boyd. No. 11 aye votes, 17 no votes.
By your vote, you have failed to sustain the motion of Alderwoman from the 14th. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 24th, you're recognized.
You know, I personally received virtually no comments on this bill from my constituents over the last 4 months. So I walked in today sort of figuring how I would vote, just based on, we're really voting on just an administrative ordinance, essentially. And so, on the one hand, I've heard, some of the arguments for, some of the arguments against. Sadly, I didn't hear actually from the SLPOA on this directly until very late. And on the other hand, I see people in masks in the front yards of members of the Board of Aldermen this morning, scaring people's children. It's the whole debate, I think, has spiraled out of control a little bit versus what this bill actually does, which is allow an appointed board to look at the internal affairs complaints of the police department. It's not civilian oversight of the police department. We already have, elected oversight of the police department. I'm somewhat of the opinion, after sort of hearing this debate, that while there's some merit to the bill, I think the bigger question is really just about oversight of the police department in general, and that's remained, I think, a question mark since we got local control of the police department. And I sort of worry how that debate is going to go in the future based on some of the actions I've seen people take recently. So I came in thinking I would vote yes. I'm going to vote present, and I expect a lot of people to say, wow, you took a pass, Ogilvy. But at the end of the day, the bill's going to go to court. Clearly, some parts of the bill conflict with state statutes. I don't think the bill will be fully enacted anyway, in any case. And, it's interesting. It's interesting. The whole idea of the bill, I suppose, is that, we make sure police officers on the job or sometimes off the job are not doing things that, violate policy or intimidate people. And yet, I've seen intimidation from certain people to try to influence us to vote one way or the other. There's just some irony there, I think. So my vote will be present, and I'll just deal with the consequences of that on my own. But it's really, at this point, it's the only way I feel comfortable of voting based on both advocates and detractors of this bill. Thanks.
Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. It was my intention to vote yes on Board Bill 208 today because I agree that civilian oversight of the police department is necessary. And I was prepared to vote yes despite the fact I wasn't 100% supportive of the way the bill came out of committee, nor was I of the mind that it was a perfect bill. Unfortunately, over the past week, including up to this very moment, I've been subjected to intimidating and ignorant behavior based on misinformation and outright lies. This has occurred on social media, in person, at my place of work, and at my own home. I will not be intimidated into a vote, and if anyone wants my support for something, they will gain it via rational, logical, and respectful conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As most of you know, I have been very much a part of the police system here in support for a number of years. But I also am critical when I need to be critical, and they know that too. But at the end of the day, we have to come to a place where we can have constructive operational procedures. And that is one of the reasons why I can support this, because I do believe that when you come together and you're on the same page and we talk and administer together, that we can come to a better outcome. I must say that I have heard about some of the things that have been said or done to others. Because I'm always up front and I always speak my mind and I tell you the truth, you know where I'm coming from, I don't bite my tongue. At the end of the day, I haven't gotten any of that. But what I will say is, in the beginning, when all this discourse was going on behind August 9th, I did see some things that I didn't necessarily agree with, and I thought it was beneath our professional body, which is the St. Louis Police Department. I must admit, in the last few months, I have seen that come to a more civil level, a better understanding. I must comment and say that the president of the association, his letters in his newspaper have been more what I consider to be congenial, to want to work together on all these issues. Because what I say to my officers and what I say to my residents is that we cannot live without each other. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a state that does not have police presence. I don't want to live in that, because we see, even with the presence, the problems that we deal with every day. And so we need them and their professionalism to even come to a higher standard, because they know how, and we can help them get there. I don't think anybody's out for just straight up punishment. I think what we want to do is just know more, have better information, have a better way of working together. And some of you may or may not know, but I've been in that position before under Chief Harmon. We had a Citizens Advisory Committee. We were actually taught every department's operations. We reviewed cases of concern on behalf of residents, and we took that information back to the community. Most people didn't even know it existed all those years. And that's how peaceful it was, because when there was something wrong, it was admitted, it was corrected, but at the end of the day, we had no subpoena power, but we had power within the district. We had ID that allowed us to go anywhere in the police department. I could go to lockup, I could go anywhere I wanted to go. I went to roll call on a regular basis. So there's a way to operate as a community of the whole. A police officer is a professional career that I hope more young people choose to take. It's not a job. We know we have some problems internally, and we're going to correct those problems together. We know that we have to operate and have those services provided in a different way, because we're in a different society. We see that all over the world. It's not just in St. Louis. It's all over the world. So we're going to work together better. And that's what I want to see come out of this. One of the things I think the police officers were afraid of is becoming a part of the Civil Service Commission. But actually, guys, that's the best thing that could have ever happened to you. Because we know that the police department is run just like the military. It's all about what your commander thinks and wants to do at any given point. But now you have a Civil Service Commission who's impartial, who can help you when you're in different situations. So that's going to be a good thing for you in the future. I really wanted to say that I've been on the bad side of the police with my children, my nephews, my nieces, all of it. But it's the way I handle it and the way I train them to handle it. Unfortunately, some bad things have happened in our community. Some of them are appalling. Some of them around the country, nobody in this room would go along with. But it's the world that we're dealing with today, and we can set an example and make it better. We can do that together. We've got some great people who service us, and I have to point out one, because you know what? If I'm in a dog fight, I want him there by my side, behind my back, and in front of me. And that's Major Caruso. Major Caruso will do whatever's necessary. First of all, he's going to have peace, and he's going to be organized, and his team works hard for him. That's what I've seen. But we also know we've had a few instances where we had to jack some people up that are police officers, because they just didn't get it. I had one who was a friend of mine call me, wanted help. I told him the best thing for him to do is to resign, because this is not the best job for you. Anytime you have that many problems, this is not the best job for you, and he did resign. So you got to look at it in an honest way and be honest about how you move forward. So we're going to prayerfully pass this today, and we're going to get the whole community on board. We're going to work close with our police officers, and we're going to show the world how we can have a better community, a safer community, and most especially work together. I pray for that. I wish for that. I hope that everybody else can, because it's got to be done. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 3rd, and then we're going to go to...
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm down here because the majority of the people that live in the 3rd Ward that are registered voters thought that I would be the best person to speak for them. And they went to the poll and voted. Perhaps there are a lot of people who don't think so, but they didn't go to the poll, or somebody else would be sitting down here. What I'm saying is that the police, all that we have right now to protect us from what goes on that we don't like. I would think that if we had some public hearings in each of the 28 wards, and in any ward where that alderman feels that he needs to hear what the people that elected him think he should be doing, saying, and thinking along this line. We didn't get elected just because I'm Freeman Bosley or because you're who you are. We got elected because we went out there and talked to people, and we talked about what it is that we were going to do in their best interest. So I think that if there is some way that we, each 28 of us, could get the feedback of the majority of people who care to talk to us about this subject matter, we're going to come up with some answers that make some sense. Right now, I speak for the people in the 3rd Ward, but I have not had an opportunity to put that in their lap for them to discuss with me what it is that they think. Everybody doesn't have an opinion. Just like everybody don't go to that poll and vote. But those that did go to the poll and vote and voted for me, I need to know what they think about this. And I think each of us needs to know what they think about this, because if we're not individuals down here for ourselves, we're down here for the people that we represent. So we need to find out what it is that they think. Perhaps some public hearings. It's not going to hurt to hear what the people say, because whatever it is that they say, the majority of it, that's who elects the President of the United States. That's who elects the governor, the mayor, and that's who elected us in these 28 wards. So we need to have some public hearings and find out what the people think about this.
Thank you. Alderman from the 5th.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'm rising in support of this bill because I feel we need it. It may not be perfect, but I couldn't, in good conscience, sit here and vote no on something that people have been working years before I ever got down here to get. I think we need to have a real conversation about the problems that we have in our community, in our city. We have a race problem. We have issues of police brutality. But how do we move forward from that? We don't keep sitting on our hands doing nothing. I feel, you have to look at the framework, work within it, and get something. We're never going to have perfect legislation that tends to everybody's needs. But as a leader, I'm going to do what's in the best interest of my constituents who elected me, and those are the only people I'm indebted to. I'm not indebted to the police officers. I'm not indebted to the mayor or any of that. I'm indebted to the people in the 5th Ward. And when myself as an alderperson has had some harsh encounters with law enforcement, I can only imagine what that's like for some of my constituents. And so I just think that as leaders, which we've already elected to come down here and be productive and just, not just be so political and be scared to take hard votes, we have to do what we were elected to do. And in doing that, that means understanding that it may not be perfect, but we need something. And so I'm going to support this. I understand, that we have some issues. We need increased community policing. We need increased training. But like I said back when, I shouldn't have to tell my 11-year-old black son how to interact with the police. We need to move forward, and that's why I'm supporting this today.
Thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today with a very heavy heart and very mixed emotions. I have been a strong supporter of social justice issues my entire adult life. I have struggled personally, throughout my entire life with my sexual orientation, coming out, coming to terms with that. It has helped me to identify with the plight of my fellow man, who are also in other disadvantaged situations, whether that's their gender, whether that's their religion, whether that's their race, etc. I campaigned the first time around back in 2008, 2009, fresh after helping President Obama get elected, with all the motivation and energy in my heart to create change and be change. And, when I campaigned the first time, one of the things that we discussed was, in fact, a civilian review board, a civilian oversight board. And I have expressed my entire support of a bill that would actually create a civilian review board or a civilian oversight board. I do not believe that this is a perfect bill. I share many of the same concerns that my colleague from the First Ward has expressed. I do have in my heart, though, the pain and suffering of so many folks that have not had the opportunity to express their own concerns when it comes to atrocities that have happened. I also think that the discourse that has happened throughout the discussion relating to this bill has not been fair to any party, frankly, whether that's the police or whether that's the community. I think that there's a lot to be learned from some of the irony that my colleague from the 24th Ward brought up earlier today. I think it's appalling, some of the tactics that have been used on both sides, whether that's the community or whether that's the police department or the POA. I have spent my life trying to work issues and not people. I think that's really important. I've brought that up many, many times. Unfortunately, in politics, that's not always possible. And likewise, it's hard to take the politics out of politics. But we all come down here to do our job. We do the best that we can every time we enter into this chamber to make rational, logical decisions, and hopefully, vote with our conscience and our heart. And, I would like to believe that in my heart that members of this community understand that and appreciate that. And likewise, that, the folks that serve this city, whether that's in a blue uniform or a brown uniform or a red polo shirt in the building division, that they all come to do the very best job that they possibly can. I don't believe that anyone shows up to work wanting to do a bad job or to do something deviant. I believe that almost all of us come to our work with the best intentions and want to do a good job. So with that, I am planning on voting for this bill. I've told that to, all my constituents. I have had a number of meetings since our first vote on the floor for this bill when we actually voted to suspend the rules to perfect it, and I voted no. For good reason. I was told that there were possibly going to be amendments to this bill to address some of the concerns. So I wanted to leave the bill open to being amended if necessary, and also leave the dialogue open between members of the community and also the POA. That vote gained me the ire of many people in this community, and there are many falsehoods and lies spread about myself and other members of this board, which frankly were very appalling, including, from folks that I consider friends and allies of mine in my struggle for social justice. I do want to make clear that that was a procedural vote. It was not a vote for or against this bill. As I mentioned, I am planning on voting for it today, even though I do believe that there are many imperfections, and I do believe that it will be going to court. And I do not know the outcome of those discussions or deliberations or trials. But I do think that this is a step in the right direction and will continue to fight for those issues as I've done my entire adult life. I do want to just make note, on a personal note, the use of a term that has been going around this building ever since I got elected, and just a personal aside, the use of the term sexual preference is extremely offensive. Extremely offensive. It is no more a preference or a choice for me to be gay than it is someone else to be heterosexual. And I find too often times that people, either through confusion, ignorance, or their own truth, will use that term. And I just have to state for the record that it is not a preference. It is who I am as a human being, just as it is any other person who is heterosexual, bisexual, transgender, etc. So, I take personal offense to that, and will hope that, well, the proper term is sexual orientation. Thank you. So I would hope that going forward, thank you for reminding me, but going forward that people would keep that in mind and use the term sexual orientation and not preference. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 15th, Alderman from the 8th, you want to wait, or you ready?
I'll go ahead and go.
Very good, Alderman. Thank you.
As this debate was going on, I picked up a copy of the Evening World. Because the men and women of our police department do a phenomenal job, and they do a job that no one else in this room would be willing to do. But I think to frame it so that they understand that we appreciate what they're doing, no matter how we vote, but just some of the headlines for the people here that went on last week in St. Louis. And these are the people that you and I and our constituents ask to solve these problems and arrest these people. Man dead after shooting at East Boogie Joint. 2 nabbed after shooting daring police chase. Maniac launches street ambush on 2 women. This one's pretty good. John Doe's sneak attack began with him putting a clip of fresh ammo in his .45 and tucking it into his waistband. Up in Baden, gun nut goes Rambo in Baden. 2 tagged with 187 beefs. That took me a while to figure out what that is. These 2 guys. 187 is, I think, probably the California Penal Code for murder. Who's the gunslinger? And I'm not sure what fleek is, but someone could enlighten me. Who is the gunslinger on fleek that pumped a slug into a man's stomach as the victim was getting into his vehicle on the north side? The gunman emerged from a chronic cloud, the 4900 block of some street. What was that street? Emerson. These are the people we're asking the men and women, the police department, to deal with for us. That your constituents don't want these individuals on the streets in their wards. I don't want them. I don't want my family exposed to be at the end of that gun. So when that police officer pulls over someone, they don't know that it's my young son who I've told him to respect police and behave, or if it's one of these individuals that are up to no good. They have a thankless job. A dangerous job. And we ask them to do everything. Now, today, we've got this bill in front of us, and I will be voting for it. But for a little bit of a different perspective, and I've told the police officers, that the reason that I support this bill is because it is important, given all of the circumstances that are going on, not just in St. Louis, but around the country, is that the citizens feel confident that they have impact on policing and procedures. It's not the individual men and women that are protecting our lives, our property. It's the policies and the practices in place that have to have direct citizen input. That's why I'm voting for it. Yes, it's obviously flawed. Obviously, there's all kinds of legal problems with the bill. But the citizens have to feel that we've made this first step to enlist their support in this process, because that's ultimately who we have to restore the confidence in. And once their confidence level is higher, I think the agitation that you see and a lot of anger that is unjustly directed towards the police will diminish. And I do ask sometimes that when you have to make a 911 call because someone's breaking into your house with a loaded, like this guy here, you know, the maniac launches street ambush on 2 women. And when that guy's coming in with a 45, the first words out of your mouth is it FTP? Because I walked up and down streets listening to that chant for a couple of months. These individual men and women who are out there, and we expect them to protect us from these people, are good people and their hearts in the right place. This process is about getting citizen input and making sure that the citizenry has the type of input in both the policies and the practices and the rules and the regulations that are being imposed upon our police department. And when the citizens have that right to do it, they will have confidence, and the men and women, and I know there's some police officers here today, but the men and women of our police department, I believe, will be able to do their job more effectively. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Standing up here today, before I came in this morning, the fact that we were taking this up for discussion and for a vote today was on many news channels. And the thing that comes to mind is I think we have to remember that the world is watching us today. Not just St. Louis, but other cities are watching what we do today. And whether we decide to take action or we decide to be inactive. I stand up here in support today of the Civilian Oversight Board because I think that action is warranted in this case. When I first decided to run for office, it was previous to any of this discussion really being in our public forefront. I had worked for the past 10 years with predominantly low-income African-American communities, whether being homeless or youth. I had heard stories of their interaction with police officers, but it wasn't what I considered my issue. Poverty was my issue. Education was my issue. But this kind of bridging of gaps between our community and the police were not my issue. But after August, I had to make this my issue. And it brought me a lot of antagonism against me, I guess. You know, just like other people who are in this room today, I was bullied throughout my campaign because of my support for this legislation. But I don't hold a grudge against anybody who were those bullies. I still maintain good relationships with the police officers in my district. We have candid conversations. We do not agree, obviously, on this issue, but we still respect each other. I knew standing up today that the residents of the 15th Ward have an expectation for me to stand up here and to support this and to champion this. It is my constituents that want to see this happen, and so I ask that my other colleagues that are here think about your constituents and who it is that you're representing. Because when it comes down to it, the only reason we are here today is because of our constituents who elected us because they think we are the people to carry their voice. So I hope in these final moments before we take this vote, I hope that other colleagues will be courageous, stand up here, and recognize that we need to show action today. We know this isn't perfect. We know that there's a lot of work to get done. We know this is going to end up in court, but it is a step in the right direction. And if we don't act, we're just going to see more and more of this non-productive dialogue taking place in our community. This is the first step, so I hope that my colleagues will vote yes with me today and start to bridge this divide that has existed in our community for far too long.
Thank you. Alderman from 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, thank you very much. First of all, I'm wondering how we got here. We are one of, is this on? We are one of two departments, or we were one of two departments in the entire world that did not have any local control of the police department. And so we can, as a result of the Civil War, the governor basically took our police department because they wanted to make sure we didn't have this military group that had more power than perhaps some of the other military within the country. We're struggling through this. This is 150 years of mess. This is a disaster. We can look at our public school system where we have no local input. We frequently do other things to try to take away the power of the people to have oversight over what's going on. But we had a Board of Police Commissioners. And for 150 years or however many years, they may not have had a Board of Police Commissioners that entire time. During that period of time, we said that we had some sort of civilian oversight, and so people were supposedly pacified by the fact that the governor and our state legislators, some of whom are now coming to the Board of Aldermen with term limits, and we're happy to have them, but they have more control or had more control over our police department. Time went along, and frankly, I thought we should have gone to the federal courts and we should have said, the Civil War is over, we have a right to our police department. But instead, what we did is we did the Herculean task of going throughout the entire state of Missouri to get our police department back. When we did legislation which was enabled by statutes 84.341, 84.347, and 590.653, when we did that, we had some choices. And I think we made the right choice. Because rather than having that discussion about all of this stuff then, we said, let's embrace our police department. And I will say, I don't meet people in my neighborhood. I don't meet people in my ward. I haven't met people in our city who say they hate the police. I know what you see on television. I know that there's reasons that people are upset. There are legitimate reasons that people are upset. But I don't know people who want to see anarchy. I don't know people who are asking for us not to have a police department. But what we did is we took the state legislature up and we adopted a resolution. I believe it might have been an ordinance. I think it was a resolution. I, in fact, started that when I was the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and then Alderwoman Young took that, and we had a whole bunch of things. Anytime you take over an operation, you have to take their liabilities and their assets and all the rest of that, and we did that. Let me read for you, because it's very brief, as the Alderwoman from the First Ward indicated, what our powers are given to us by state statute 590.653. Each city, county, and city not within a county, that's us, may establish a civilian review board or may use an existing civilian review board, apparently we sort of have that, which has been appointed by the local governing body with the authority to investigate allegations of misconduct by local law enforcement officers towards members of the public. The members shall not receive compensation, but shall receive reimbursement from the local governing body for all reasonable and necessary expenses. By the way, it does say that they have to get reimbursement for reasonable and necessary expenses, so there will probably be some issues arising on that. Number 2, the board shall have the power to receive, investigate, make findings, and recommend disciplinary action upon complaints by members of the public against members of the police department that allege misconduct involving excessive use of force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, or use of offensive language, including but not limited to slurs relating to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, they got it right, Alderman, and disability. The findings and recommendations of the board and the basis therefore shall be submitted to the chief law enforcement official. No finding or recommendation shall be based solely upon an unsworn complaint or statement, nor shall prior unsubstantiated, unfounded, or withdrawn complaints be the basis for any such findings or recommendations. What you did not hear me say is subpoena. There's nothing in there about subpoena. There's nothing in the state constitution or the other statutes that I've seen about subpoena. There's nothing in our charter about subpoena. You will find subpoena in terms of what the Board of Aldermen's powers are. We have that. So we have a process, which I won't bore you with, you all know it, in terms of changing that if that's the desire, whether that's possible to do given this statute. We have a lot of moving parts here. In addition to the mess that's already been created, which is none of our fault. By the way, a lot of people in Jeff City for many years sort of liked this mess because it gave more power in Jefferson City and less over here. But we have a collective bargaining agreement. We have the Civil Service Commission. We have a mayor. We have a comptroller. We have a president of the Board of Aldermen. We have all these aldermen who are down here. So we've got a lot of moving parts. And the police are not happy about this. Understandably, they have some questions because this is about their livelihood. I went through the Citizens Police Academy, and that is like a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of what the police go through every day. But if you can imagine, sort of like what we ask firefighters to do, here's this blaze, and we're asking them to do exactly what our parents and every sinew and part of our brain tells us not to run into that fire. We call the police department. They go there. This is like telephone tag, okay? You call 911, it goes to the evaluator. The evaluator sends it to a dispatcher. The dispatcher sometimes is getting it out to a lieutenant or sergeant. Then it gets to the guy or woman who we expect to go into this situation. So that person's going in there. They don't know what's going on. The worst thing could be that they have a couple people who are fighting. It's a domestic dispute. So they go in there. They knock on the door. What are they going to get? Is somebody going to shoot through that door? Are they going to go in there and they're going to be attacked because this is some kind of setup? Are the people who are fighting one another going to say, you know, here comes this other interloper, and now we're going to agree on this that we don't like this person? There's a whole bunch of things that we're asking these police to do. So far be it from me to want to ask that officer to second guess. Somebody's pointing a gun at you, and you have a split second. You have a very split second to figure out, is it that person or me? And that's what it is on the street. But we got to have rules to kind of say, okay, what can the police do? They can't think they got a taser and shoot the guy to death, right? We don't want them shooting some guy just because we stopped them and the person's running away and they get shot in the back. We don't want that to happen. So we have the Internal Affairs Division. And everybody says, well, that's a bunch of other people who are also wearing that same uniform. I'm sure if you're a police officer, you don't necessarily feel that way when you're going in front of IAD. However, there is that perception of what's going on. How did we get to where we are today? There's a lack of trust. The police don't trust us in this process, and they have some legitimacy for that. They see what goes on down here, and despite the fact that we try to be logical, there's a lot of emotion in all of this debate that goes on as well. And there are people in the community Okay, let's switch that situation where instead of the police officer going to that call, you've got the person who's out on the street, and the police are coming, and you just happen to be in that location. So here come all these people, in our case with badges and guns and blue uniforms, and the police don't know whether you're involved in this incident or not, and so they come up to you and they start hassling you. At least that's the way you view it, that they're somehow hassling you. Every time police officers don't generally, although I'm hopeful that with citizen-oriented policing, with outreach and so forth, that we have more of this. And there are opportunities. This is only one tool. But we need to have those opportunities where flesh and blood, police officers and their families, because each one of these officers has a family of some sort. They didn't just sort of magically appear on earth. And they have neighbors. Some of them are married. A lot of them have kids. So, you know, they have all these same relationships. But you're the person who just happens to be at this location when all the police are coming here. You want to know that there's some sort of rules as well in terms of the engagement of all of this going on. So you have the Internal Affairs Division. We've had the governor in the past. So what we did more recently when we took over the police department is we shifted the person who was in control of our police department from the governor to the mayor. That's not sufficient. I don't think anybody other than perhaps future mayors and the current mayor would be happy about that. This mayor won't be here forever, so we'll have other mayors, and so there's some question about whether you want one person to have that much responsibility in terms of the police department. We no longer have the police board. So what we're trying to do now is changing a 1914, I believe it is, charter to have some provision of some additional oversight. And it's not perfect. We can't do some things because you can't just make it up, folks. We know we can't make it up. We can't say you're going to have subpoena power when there's no subpoena power. You can change the ways in which some of these people are selected. You know, early on in 2006, I jumped on board in terms of saying that we needed some sort of civilian oversight. And that's not because I am anti-police. It's because I'm pro-police, and it's because I'm pro-community, and I'm pro-everybody having the right to know that they are safe in their homes and that they are safe when the police happen to come into a very volatile situation and you just happen to be there. But the details got messy, and so I kind of backed away from that. We are correct. This is not perfect legislation. There's a lot of moving pieces. We're changing 150 years of history. But we do need to do this. It's the beginning of an entire process and many other things that need to take place. Because the police need to have people in our communities that are keeping our communities safe. And when I live in a community where many of the folks say, hey, my relationship with the police, they say it worse than this, but it ain't great. Well, the police don't have a good relationship because they're going into a difficult situation and they're trying to protect themselves and their family. And the people who are out there in the community never see the better side of the police as flesh and blood and real human beings, because every time the police are called, you know, the evaluator and dispatcher don't say, we want car number 24 to go down to, Chippewa and Broadway because everybody's having a great time down there and they want to see you. It's the stuff that we don't want to deal with. When you hear the gunshots, when somebody next door has had their car stolen or you've been victimized. So that's what we're talking about. It's not something punitive toward the police department. It's not something that we're giving to people who don't somehow deserve to have oversight over their police. It's an opportunity to begin a healing process. And this healing process is a mess, and the scab is going to continue to be ripped open, and there's going to be internal turmoil and strife for a very long time. But the first thing that we can do is to stand up and to say that, you know, sort of as doctors of the legislature, we're going to begin that healing process. And it begins today. It begins in terms of some of the things that we say, in terms of how we treat one another. And Alderwoman from the 6th, I think it's despicable that you would feel not that you would feel that way, but that you would be put under strife like that, because that's not part of the healing process. The healing process is when we start, depending on what side of this you're on, if you start thinking like the other side and say, okay, if I were on this other side and I was doing this, how would I feel about this? All I can tell you is that everybody who is marching has a legitimate reason for their march. And they understand what's happening. But so do the police, and they have a legitimate interest in terms of what they're doing and should be doing to protect our community. This is one small step. It's one giant leap for us because we've never done it before, and we're trying to transform 150 years of a mess. So I know we're going to do it today. We're either going to vote it up or we're going to vote it down. I won't be here in the future. If you vote it down, I'm not going to be here. But I know that this is a tremendous chance for us to begin that healing process, and I hope that we will take advantage of that today.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I rise with a heavy heart, heavy laden, thinking about voting president. This is the first time in 8 years that I've been down to this board that I've seen the mayor's name on a board bill. What I don't like about this bill is the districts. Get me off of that district. I don't want to be on the 3rd district. So I'm asking, when this passed, I do not want to be on this district. See, I've been lobbied by everybody but Joe Biden, the vice president of the country, trying to get me to sway my vote to do whatever. But the main thing is that while we are here right now, my community, the 4th Ward, is being disrespected with a press conference about an issue that's going on right now that we're not included in. We receive so much disrespect, and you asking for the question agents, please don't interrupt me. We have received so much disrespect, there's so much disregard for the leadership in the 4th Ward that is crazy. So we are not on even none of the commissions that the mayor requests. No constituent from the 4th Ward is on a commission. How can we be on this oversight board and we're not even on the commission? How we cannot get recognized? We will be overlooked with the people that's on the board. A lot of people that even lobbied me wanted to make sure that I was not coming back down there for the next 4 years. But they made a mistake. I want to vote for this bill with the promise that it was just made me that once this bill passed, that he take me off of this 3rd district and place me somewhere else. We have to amend this bill, but I do not want to be in that 3rd district on the selection because I will never get a person from the 4th Ward on that board because I will be overridden by whoever is on that commission. So I don't want to be on that. And I'm seriously thinking about taking my name off because of the disrespect and disregard that the mayor has for my ward and my constituents, that I really don't want to have my name affiliated with his name on this board bill. But again, I'll be sitting here thinking, or waiting on the vote.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the Alderman from the 21st to yield to interrogation, please.
Alderman from the 21st, will you yield to the Alderman from the 11th?
Anytime.
Alderman from the 11th, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Alderman. I just have one question. Are the members of the Citizens Review Board going to be subject to any scrutiny as it relates to loan defaults or judgments against them?
No, we don't do that, apparently, in St. Louis.
Thank you, Alderman. Mr. President, I'm going to try to be brief here. It's been long, and a lot of the stuff, is going to be redundant, so I'm going to skip it. We're making somewhat light of the fact that the mayor's name is on this. You don't have to get very far into the bill to realize that, Section 3, subsection 1, and that's not very far in it. The 7 members are nominated by the mayor of the city of St. Louis, and the alderman from the 4th. I'll use every bit of influence I have at room 200 to get you thrown off. But, Mr. President, this particular Board Bill 208, the committee substitute, the entire concept is certainly the most recent addition has been an exercise in the macabre. I mean, this thing, we can't perceive it as being, a silver bullet, and I know that's a bad play on words. And I think I have all the respect in the world for the alderman from the 18th who's been working on this a very, very long time. But I lost my train of thought on the mayor's office. I think the fundamentals of American government, which I know we all took in school, there's a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch. I've been here a long time, and the mayor always brings legislation here. I mean, the mayor, that's where it all starts. The Birkenstock bill, I don't think they came to the alderman from the 7th. They came to room 200. I would think that a lot of our redevelopment bills that are major come to room 200. So the mayor sponsors legislation here all the time, but he's got to get an alderperson to handle it. And I say that because I think we're setting a bad precedent here. Is it the end of the world? Of course not. But again, there's 3 distinct branches of government. Let's say, hypothetically, that during our perfection process, we had put the subpoena power in here. Ironically, Mayor Slay would be vetoing a bill with his name on it, which I guess would be one of the first times he's exercised poor judgment, Mr. President. I've got this all marked up, and the alderman from the 21st told me to be quiet, so I'm going to... there is a conflict with a number of things that the state statutes say, and I guess sometimes we maybe take this lightly. We're writing laws here. We're writing laws here. And I thought that during the interim, when we had the opportunity to get my good friend from the 12th Ward reelected, that the differences that were in here would be worked out with the powers that be, and clearly they weren't. I'll start citing pages like the alderman from the 1st. To the extent permitted by law. Well, that goes as it relates to what kind of records this review board can get. To the extent permitted by law, well, clearly we're handcuffed right there. That's the second bad law enforcement analogy I've used. We've got handcuffs and silver bullets. But the report shall be made to the public, presented at an annual meeting, prescribed and adopted by the Citizens Review Board. I don't know about the rest of the aldermen, but I get complaints about what the police do all the time. All the time. People are under duress. The police see these heinous and stupid things occur all the time, so unless they come to the crime scene really excited. The question is, and we'd have to ask former President Clinton, how you define misconduct. I mean, think about it. Misconduct. That is as big an umbrella, I mean, it would fit in this room and keep most of us dry. That to me is way too broad in scope, and that's what you get when you're writing laws and then sit down to actually try to go through them. Section 5, the Director of Public Safety, with the approval of the board, will assign a staff member to act as the COB Executive Director. Do we have somebody that's qualified to do that? You know, we're playing with people's lives here. We're doing the job of we hope in conjunction with an internal affairs department of the police department who are allegedly trained to do this. I just don't think you get an 18-year veteran of the building division that's into bowed walls and put him over this particular commission. And I mean that sincerely. The board and its members acting in their official capacity, I'm in a different section now, shall obtain legal advice by and through the city councilor's office. Well, as the alderwoman from the first pointed out, this is an inside job. I mean, it reminds me of the old saying, and I'm dating myself, let's get to the roundhouse, boys, they can't corner us there. I mean, this entire cycle winds back with the commissioner now, and everybody's watching Blue Bloods, so we're going to call him a commissioner. He's been the chief of police for the 70 years that I've been around, and he seems to answer to that. I have a feeling that he'll be answering to a lot more once we get beyond this particular stage. This Section 6 on the inspection procedures, it's a gargantuan task. I think a lot of education is going to be needed in this. The investigation of complaints that we're giving to the public is really going to be a big job. I think we're going to get inundated. Having said all of that, to echo the alderman from the 20th, excuse me, we need to do something. We're kind of, if you watch the local news, we're kind of at war. My vote is on behalf of the people in the 11th Ward who want, we got some bad guys and gals. And I think we got some good policemen. And I think the majority of the policemen are really good policemen. Have we got some policemen that have to exercise judgment in a millisecond? Have we got people charging our police officers who want to commit suicide? You bet we do. And put yourself in their particular shoes. Mr. President, in summary, this is, in fact, somewhat of a step in the right direction. I applaud my colleagues in committee who really tried to get this worked out. I think if the motion to table is emblematic of the vote that's about to proceed, we're going to have this, and then I guess we'll just say let the litigation begin. But I think it's extremely important that what's going on now has to stop, and I think if cooler heads prevail, we can really improve the relationship with the man on the street and the general public, because we simply have to. So those of you that voted on that motion, don't change your vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Anyone for the first time? Alderman from the 18th.
Not directly. Yes, Mr. President, members of the board. I have yet to see a perfect piece of legislation at this Board of Aldermen to this date. It becomes a matter of opinion, and one person's sugar is another person's salt. You can always find some area to criticize and condemn, some area that does not meet your standards, some area that you feel is not quite up to par to what you think. That's why you have a diverse body like this, so that you can get the various opinions and ideas and try to find something that is in between them that you can get past. That's what, hopefully, Committee Substitute for Board Bill 208 is before us. When I first introduced a piece of legislation back in 2006, and I was the main sponsor, we began that process back in 2004, interfacing with various groups and organizations, meeting with the police association. At that time, there was a board of police commissioners, meeting with the board of police commissioners. Within the time period of our discussions, there had been 2, probably 3 changes in that over that period of time. We met and sat with all of these groups at one time, the groups individually, various components of all those different constituents, to try to craft something that would get passed. Was it back in 2006 exactly what we would have liked? Was it as radical as some of us thought it should be? Absolutely not. Was it everything that I would like to have seen back in 2006? Nowhere near it. That's why I said I haven't seen a perfect piece of legislation thus far. We have been told by the attorneys of the City Councilor's Office, the Board of Aldermen, that we have a strong piece of legislation that could withstand a challenge. Lots of language were changed to make that happen. But if I can clarify a few things. We passed a bill back in 2006. That bill was vetoed. That bill was used as the template to create the mayor's executive order. If you look at the order that the mayor issued, there's language out of our original bill that he placed into it. The mayor made a public statement at that time that he would...
Hold on for a second, Alderman. I don't know who has their cell phone on, but whoever it is, could you please put your cell phone on silent so as not to be disruptive? Please continue on.
The mayor at that time made the statement that he would not enact his executive order that was modeled after our board bill at that time. It was modeled after, took language directly from it, so that we're clear that's where that language came from. He would not try to implement it without support or recommendations from this Board of Aldermen. His executive order had him doing everything. And so we refused to participate in that because it didn't carry all of the elements that we thought were necessary for civilian review. That was in 2006. In between then and now, we've had nothing. That meant that when a citizen has a complaint, they have to go to the police department to make that complaint. And I hope you hear what I'm saying on that. In between 2006 and now, we've had nothing. No third party that that citizens could really go to when they had complaints, unless they go to the courts. They'd have to go to the Internal Affairs Department of the police department to make their complaints. Many of us felt that that was unacceptable, that we could no longer continue to do that. So we've been working on this piece of legislation since that time. So I just wanted us to be clear that when we began then this process, we didn't look at the mayor's executive order. We went back to the original bill that we had. And that's why you can see a connection in the language from the original bill to the mayor's executive order to what we have today. The mayor's executive order, which had to be adopted by the Board of Police Commissioners, that particular order was modeled after our original bill. But it did not have the things that we felt were necessary to have the minimal amount for decent civilian review. This bill that we've worked on and have here presently before us, its genesis began with our original bill, and then we began the process of trying to update it based upon the change. In the original bill, we had subpoena power, but be clear how it was in there. The board really didn't have it directly because we had the Board of Police Commissioners. They would have to petition to the Board of Police Commissioners to enact it on their behalf. So we can be clear, they didn't have the carte blanche power that some of us think that they had based upon the legislation. That's not how it read. Because we had a Board of Police Commissioners that nobody in this city, no legislative body or other elected officials could interfere with based upon state statute. And so then we had to craft something in such a weaving, winding road to be able to get as far as we felt we could possibly get to get something decent on behalf of the citizens. That is no different than this bill here. We were faced with other limitations based upon the statute that was passed by the state that allowed for the city of St. Louis to have local control. There were lots of locks and bolts and doorknobs and doors and hoops to have to go through to be able to do this. We thought immediately that we could put subpoena power in the bill, and so we had a version of this bill that had it. When our various attorneys looked at it for the city, they said, we can't do it that way. Read what the statute says. If you want to do that, it has to either be in the city charter or it has to go and be passed by the state to give you that authority to do so. Well, we did not want to go up against that, so we accepted that opinion from the legal counsel, saying that none of us saying there were attorneys. We accepted that and then tried to craft it in such a manner that we can get as far forward and as progressive as we can in the thing without stepping completely what people would consider to be against the law and against the legislation or the state statute. Will that make a perfect bill? Which one is? Point out to me in the city ordinances which one of those bills is perfect. Do we have one that is perfect here now? I doubt it. Is it as far as we felt we possibly can go? Yes, it is. Are we looking to try to do more? Yes, we are. Do we see this as an end all? No, we do not. Do we feel like the cup is completely full? Not the cup I drink from. Is there lots more that needs to be done? Certainly. Are there other areas that we need to work on as it relates to local control? Most definitely. But where do you start? At what point do you say, well, let's not do this because we're not getting everything that we want? Or at what point do you say we must begin someplace and take the first step? We see this as taking that first step, knowing that it is not everything that we would like to see. And I'm saying we, I'm born a twin, y'all speak plural. But there are groups of us that have been working on this for some time. Am I saying that just because it was a group of us working this for a long time means you have to support it? No, I'm not saying that. But I wanted us to recognize more clearly the genesis of how we got to this particular place. That this bill is not modeled after anything the mayor wrote. It is modeled after the original legislation that we had, that the mayor used to create his executive order that was later adopted by the Board of Police Commissioners that we refused to participate in. The Justice Department's report on civilian review says that the best ones, the ones that really meet the standard and really help people improve that relationship between the police and the citizenry, is created by a legislative body, not administratively or executively. That when you do it executively, that individual executive does not bring the legitimacy or the separation, the feeling that there is a third party enough to be able to do this, while a legislative body, who includes lots of people, have provided folks with a greater feeling of legitimacy and that a third party is really representing their interests. So this bill is a good step. It is certainly not everything that I would like to have seen as the sponsor of the bill, but it is a good step. I've learned over the years that the legislative body requires dialogue and change. You have to be flexible. You could argue, well, you've been flexible enough where now you're broken. We're trying to fix what we consider to be a broken system. Not that we have been broke to do it. If you notice, some of our individuals, here's the question then before us. What is our alternative? What will we put on the table, and can we get that passed, or do we continue to have nothing? Well, many of us have now taken the position. Many of us have now taken the position that nothing ain't good enough, and that we need to have something to begin this process, knowing that it is not everything that we would like to see right now, but also knowing that we can continue to work with this thing and continue to move it closer in the direction that we'd like to see. Have there been lots of discussions? Yes. We had some discussions with the police, had discussions with with the various groups and organizations. Many of our activist groups don't feel we've gone far enough. The police say we've gone too far. We have all different kinds of opinions here at the Board of Aldermen, but that is the process. That is how it goes. And so here we are at this place, at the precipice of being able to make what I would consider to be a historic vote and a significant change for the citizenry of the city of St. Louis. I would like to thank all those who have made input, whether you supported it or not. Those who have supported it, we appreciated it. The groups and organizations that have stood by this and have not backed off all these years, these groups and organizations are supporting this. And you can't really get any more radical than them. But they are supporting it. Why? Because they see it as a good step to make at this time in history. So I wanted to clarify why there is some similarity in the language from our original bill. And really, the first bill that I introduced was back in 2005, not 2006. But we didn't get anywhere with it in 2005. 2006, when I became chair of the committee, we got the bill passed. That bill is the one in 2006 that was vetoed by the mayor, that was used as a template to create the executive order, which was then adopted by the Board of Police Commissioners, which was never enacted because we refused to participate in it. That became the groundwork or the framework for the present bill that we're dealing with. Hopefully that will bring some clarification on the earlier discussion. Thank you.
Thank you all. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, if you would just give me a moment. I wanted to address what the alderman from the 20th said about what can and cannot occur, and my device just crashed. Oh, yes.
Alderwoman, if you'd just like to use this mic right here.
This is when paper is maybe better. Okay.
Yeah.
I try not to use so much paper. So okay. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The alderman from the 20th talked about what we could and could not do. I spoke earlier about that I don't like to just rely on what I say. So when we have city councilor opinions, to me, we ought to be able to get them. It's been a couple of months, and I still haven't been able to get it. But I know a lot of lawyers. So I don't just have to rely on the city councilor. And I was pretty good. In fact, contracts is one of my best things. I can read a contract, and I can read state statutes. Sometimes people don't understand construction of what you can and cannot do, and sometimes people mislead you on purpose because they don't support things. This is what 590-653 says, so let's read it again so he can understand that it does not prevent subpoena power. That is just not true. It says, each city, county, and city not within a county may establish a civilian review board or may use an existing civilian review board which has been appointed by the local governing body with the authority to investigate allegations of misconduct by local law enforcement officers toward members of the public. Okay, this is real interesting. This tells you what the legislature means when they say you can't do something. The members shall not receive compensation, but shall receive reimbursement from the local governing body for all reasonable and necessary expenses. When they don't want you to do something, they tell you that you cannot. It does not say you cannot have subpoena power. In fact, this very paragraph goes on to say that if we had already had a civilian review board, we could have kept that. If that civilian review board had subpoena power, we would have been able to keep that. Again, I want to make it perfectly clear. And the alderman from the 11th has been a member of the state legislature, so he can back me up with this. I would ask your lobbyist, okay, he could back me up as a state legislator, that when the state legislature wants to make a point that you can't do something, they just put in there, you can't do it, okay? So right here, when they say the members shall not receive compensation, but shall receive reimbursement, they told us that we could not pay the people. No place in this, in Chapter 590-653, does it say you shall not allow a civilian board that has subpoena power. It, again, allows us to have a civilian review board that we already had in effect. So if we had already set up something that gave them subpoena power, it didn't say you can have it, but you got to take subpoena power away. But I tell you what happens is when the city councilor is hired and appointed by the mayor, and the mayor doesn't want that to happen, then you get opinions that are not worth the trash can that you throw them in. They're not independent, and we don't insist that they do that. In fact, talking to our prior legal counsel here, he differs. Mostly every attorney that I talk to that knows anything about construction says it doesn't say you can't have subpoena power. It doesn't say it because it's not true. It's something that was made up to limit what we would do. Now, people are saying we are going to have a legal response and a legal challenge to this. I want to say to the police, if I were you, I would not challenge it. This is perfect because it doesn't have any teeth at all. So just leave it the way it is. You will find out. It's like letting the circuit attorney appoint your attorney to defend you. It is round, it is circular, it is a conflict of interest, and it in no ways, the mayor has protected you, if you all could just hear me, it doesn't have any teeth. So you can stand up there and talk about all you want to about, we've been working on this. I have been working on this since before I came here. I started at the Public Defender's Office in 1989. I grew up a very pro-police person. I grew up down the street from the police. I believed in the police. I am not an African American who had bad interactions, 99% with the police. They were my friends. I grew up. They were my playmates. They were my neighbors. I have the utmost respect for them. I'm also a person that will get out and protest and raise heck about if it's not right. I've written, when I was off this board, I wrote to the former chief about something and got that addressed because I think the police didn't address that right. So I can want a civilian review board and not be anti-police. And that's what I want. I want a true one. I don't like it when people think that they have something that they don't have. So while I was off, people told people to call me. So my constituents that called me or sent me notes, when I sit back and told them what was in this bill, to a one, they said, oh, this is not what they told us. This is not what we're supporting. Well, how does the mayor appoint the public safety director who appoints the director of the Citizens Review Board? And how does that work? Then how do we have an independent board? We don't. No, there are not any perfect bills, but there are some bills that have some teeth to them. And then there are some bills that are just fluff for us to say we've done something, okay? And when we leave everything up to if the mayor or the public safety director wants to put money into something, and if they don't do it, we have no recourse, then that's not a bill. I don't want people to come back. I want to make it perfectly clear. Do not come back here saying, well, it's not working the way it's supposed to. The alderman from the 20th talked about, well, we got our police back. And again, we got it back, but we had an older person who decided we couldn't ask questions. And so she shut down. To this day, we haven't had any, in 2 years now, we haven't had the public be able to come before the police and ask questions. That is just plain wrong. We didn't get control of our police department. We gave it to the mayor and the chair of public safety and their whims. That is not citizen control. A person who's trying to have citizen control does not try to prevent the very people who sit on a committee, as what happened so far, from even asking questions. So we jump into things like that we are getting something and then we don't get it, and then we're shocked, and then they say, well, why didn't you tell us this? So I'm telling you now, there is nothing, get it out and read it yourself. There is nothing in the state statute that says we cannot have subpoena power. That is a myth put out by the former city councilor who wrote that up because she was instructed to. I dare any of you all to see where it says we couldn't. And I tell you to go right into the same legislation and see when they didn't want us to do something, they told us we couldn't do it. Now, you cannot argue that they will tell us that we cannot pay the people, but they wouldn't have said we could not have subpoena power if they didn't mean for us not to have it, okay? That is just not true. It's not a true construction. It is something to make people think it's okay. Now, if you just say, well, the mayor's going to veto that, well, let him veto it, but at least bring a real bill. If we're just going to give the mayor everything he wants and says he would do, and we'll let the mayor say, well, I will not let you elect a board because I don't believe that they should be elected. I think we should start with the mayor. Let's unelect him, okay? That's how you do that. You don't just say, I'm not going to deal with elected officials. He tried to do that with me. That's why I'm standing right back here, because I got elected again by the very same people who sent me down here. So if you want a real civilian review board that has some power, this is not it. The alderman from the 4th talked about he had been assured that they would change and get that out. They should have changed and got that out anyway. They should have talked to him and found out who. I mean, this reminds me of redistricting, when you just put people in something and say, well, this is what I'm doing, and this is good for us, and they're similar, and you didn't talk to the people. So, no, he doesn't like it, and I don't like it either, because I already know that Sam and I will never get to have anybody appointed. And so you're trying to push something through where you have power, but you don't care that anybody else has an equal opportunity with the people that they represent to also have their point of view. Doesn't have to be the same. It just has to be a different point of view. I live in North St. Louis. Sam lives in North St. Louis. We got 11 black aldermen, but we don't have 2 of them don't live in North St. Louis, okay? So we have a very few amount of people and that really live there, south of Delmar, that represent the people and live there. And so they look to me to come down here, and one of my constituents was down here today saying, where were you the other day? Because we wanted you to tell about the things that are not in there, because we don't want this bill. This is not a good bill. I appreciate that the alderman from the 18th been working on it, but when I was in the public defenders, we were talking about civilian review boards in 1989, and in no way did we anticipate that the mayor would control the whole process, and he would also be able to appoint the police chief and the director of public safety and the head of the civilian review board, and decide if you would fund it or not. I don't understand what that ain't. Not only is that not near perfect, that's not near making any sense. I would suggest to each of you all, if you all were on trial for something, you would not let the circuit attorney appoint your defense attorney. Because if you did, you would get found guilty, okay? So that is what I am saying about conflict of interest. That's what the alderman from the 11th was talking about, meeting in the round room. It all comes back to the same thing. And so people who are not used to construction sometimes we just go along with what is told to you, or they'll read and say, well, it didn't say we could, and it also didn't say we couldn't. And where it said that we couldn't, it specifically said we shall not pay the people. They know how to tell us what we cannot do. So to try to say, well, we've been working on this so long, so have I. I was here when he started it. Before, I thought we started talking about it in the 90s, but I know we started talking about it in the public defenders in the 80s, because we were so concerned about events that had occurred. And my first 3 cases I had got not guilties with the police testifying, and to this day I can take you to the corners and all of you would know that that wasn't the truth. That was a shock for me as a person who grew up with the police, because I thought that the police always told the truth, and so it was very shocking to find out that that wasn't so. Okay, so that's something I had to grow up on. But by the same token, it is shock to me to see this piece of legislation that gives the mayor all the control that he already was going to have with his executive order. We got other executive orders that the Board of Aldermen doesn't pass, and he goes and deals with it. We have executive order for years and years and years, 20-something years, about minority participation. And he puts it out there, and we say, well, we're doing 25 and 5. Has no basis in the law, because it's never been really legally passed and has not been supported. So when we start saying what we can't do, finding the state statute where it says we can't. You will not find it, because that is not true. And so if you continue to listen to what the city councilors' opinions are without seeking outside information, you will get what the mayor is telling you. And so we might as well get rid of this whole Board of Aldermen if only we do what the mayor. We're supposed to be a check and balance. I want to say that the alderman of the 21st Ward did something I want to commend him on. A few months ago, I think you got an independent police analysis from a different attorney that said it differently. That's what we need to do. I was here long enough to know that that's what the comptroller had to do, because the city council is supposed to represent us but does not. And so I will vote for this legislation if you show me any place in here that it says we cannot have a subpoena. It doesn't say that, because that is not true. And with that, it is not a good piece of legislation. It is a conflict of interest, and we should not be doing this. And we should not be trying to make the people think that we have something that doesn't exist.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm having a good time. Are you? Statutory construction. Wow. And I do respect and appreciate what the Alderwoman is saying. Statutory construction can be pretty mind-numbing. That's why we leave it to judges and not legislators. But obviously we have to be cognizant of it, and she's trying to point those out just as I have. There are differences of opinion. I'm sure that we could look at some court decisions, and they would say in certain circumstances when the legislature says or, they actually meant and, depending on what the circumstances are. But let me clarify what I said. What I said is you will not find in Missouri Revised Statutes 590.653, you will not find the word subpoena. That's true. Nor will you find it in the Constitution of the state of Missouri for the Civilian Oversight Board, or in any of the ordinances as far as I know, statutes, or in our charter of the city of St. Louis, or any of our, well, you really couldn't probably do it by ordinance. So everything is within a context, and so I didn't give the basic context as the alderman from the 11th was talking about. We find out some fundamental things in terms of government. One of the fundamental things is that we are a limited form of government, which means that there are specific powers that are given to the government, and if they're not given to the government, they remain with the states and the people. That's within our basic framing documents. And so if we do something about subpoena, and I think that one of the reasons why I think it's a good idea that the city councilor be there at the side of the folks who are ultimately going to be the civilian oversight board is because it's important to know what those frameworks are, and to go beyond that is what we used to call in the law ultra vires, outside of the power. So when you're in a limited form of government, and certainly we don't want to be giving all sorts of powers to the Board of Aldermen or to our mayor or to judges that go beyond what we think as people in a free society they should have, we specifically enumerate. We are a government of enumerated powers, and when those powers are not there, we are thereby protected from somebody running amok, we would hope. So it would be ultra vires. The alderman from the 18th talked about legitimacy, and it's very important. Years ago, in political science, we used to talk about legitimacy. We pass all sorts of laws down here, but if we tell somebody that they have to go across Market Street in a hail of bullets and thou shalt do that, I think we know that people aren't going to do that, because there's things that are basic common sense and self-preservation and whatnot. So there's all sorts of things about legitimacy. I think there's some difficulty, and I really haven't studied this, but for a mayor just to issue an executive order that says you're going to have this civilian oversight board that essentially takes the legislative power and says, this is the way that it's going to operate, that may be one of the reasons why we don't have a civilian oversight board currently, because If I were a police officer, I would question the authority of that. Show me where it says you can do that, Mr. Mayor, that you can just say that this is the way that it's going to be. I would also point out that, well, let me go back to the legitimacy. So let's assume this Civilian Oversight Board is established, and the police department never gives them any of the documents that they ask for. Well, there are procedures in here that say that they have to give those documents over, and yes, it's a difficult process, but so is the subpoena power, because guess what, folks? When the Board of Aldermen has this subpoena power, it doesn't end there. Those bureaucracies and those departments can say, go take a hike, we're not going to give it to you. You still have to go to the court, and you have to show where within those enumerated powers, where is it that it says you have the subpoena power? If it doesn't say it, you can't just magically put it in there. The court's not going to magically put it in there, because guess what? They went to law school and they understand, as we all do, that there are certain enumerated powers for that. So if the police department never gives any of these documents over, the citizens are not going to be happy with that. You know, in 2006, we didn't get the Civilian Oversight Board. We have a really good shot at getting it now. You know what? You know why? In part, August 9th. That's why. We might not be talking about this if it wasn't for August 9th. But August 9th happened, and a whole bunch of other things have happened. And whether or not we should have done it, we're doing it, or we're looking at doing it. So our residents are not going to give legitimacy to a fraud. And so if they're not giving the documents over, guess what? The alderman from the 1st is absolutely right. We can put in the power of subpoena, but there's a process for doing that, and we all know how to do it, and we'll do it, and we'll make the charter changes, and they will have the power of subpoena power, and then there may be arguments about, you know, all of that. But yes, the legitimacy will be done in that way. If this is a toothless tiger, ask yourself this: why is the Police Officer Association still talking about this? Still wanting changes, still very concerned about what's going on? Why would that be? The reason is everybody is concerned about this for legitimate reasons. And as are we, and we just need to make it happen. And when it doesn't happen as well as it ought to, because we pass a lot of legislation down here, and it doesn't magically get enforced, and it doesn't magically happen. But I believe that residents, and I as a resident, and all of us here, are going to make it happen.
Alderman from 21st, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the comments that were made today. Some of the concerns that were raised by the Alderman from the 1st and Alderman from the 20th, along with others, I share. Many people may remember that I was not an original sponsor of this bill. I wasn't even a co-sponsor. It was actually the Alderman from the 18th, who has worked for many, many years to bring civilian oversight, civilian review to the city of St. Louis, who sponsored this bill. I didn't co-sponsor it because I had many of the same concerns. It was an imperfect bill. And when the Alderman from the 18th to Chairmanship of Public Safety, he asked me to handle this bill. And I decided to do it, and I decided to do it in a way that I could try to work to the best possible bill that we could pass. So that was a decision I made when I added my name to the bill, to try to make it the best possible bill that we can pass. And so in committee, we spent many hours debating possible changes. Went through this bill line by line, and I stood for over 3 hours explaining possible changes that I thought would make it stronger. And we made some minor changes to the bill, which I do think makes it better. But many of the things I wanted to see included didn't get included. And that's governance. That's legislation. You don't get everything you want. But you don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And what's happening in our city, St. Louis has become the poster child for police problems, broken trust between community and police. And whether it's the city of St. Louis or it happens in one of the many suburbs that surround us, it is St. Louis that people know. And it is St. Louis that people are looking at today to decide what we are going to do about what we've seen in these last few months in our city. This is the last meeting of this legislative session. We have seen our city on the front page of newspapers all across the world. These issues have been discussed at length, and people are waiting to see what we're going to do about it. So the choice we have as members of this body today in this vote that we're about to take is, are we going to do something? Are we going to take a step forward and try to move out of some of the darkness we've seen these last few months and move a few steps closer to the light? Or are we going to decide to do nothing? That's the choice. The choice today is not between an imperfect bill and a perfect bill. A perfect bill is not a choice. It's not available to us today. There were some significant changes we proposed that just want the votes down here to support it. The mayor threatened to veto a version of the bill that had subpoena power. I would love to see it have subpoena power, but that's not possible today. So we as adults and as legislators and as people who've been elected to make decisions, today we have to make a decision. And I know when I added my name to the bill, I made a decision to support it and to push it forward, the best possible version we can get out. And so I would expect anybody else who added their name to the bill and is a sponsor to support this bill today. Because those are the choices we have to make, and those are the choices we were sent down here to make. A present vote is not making a decision. That's standing on the sidelines. A no vote is saying that you are satisfied with the status quo and we will remain here indefinitely. And that should not be good enough for any of us. We have to move forward. This is a way to do it. There are enough co-sponsors on this bill to pass it, and I expect us to pass this bill today. With that, I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 21st, seconded by the Alderman from the 18th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 208, Committee Substitute. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyers. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Varmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruson. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Howard. "17 aye votes, 8 no votes, 2 present."
By your vote, you sustain the motion. The Alderman from the 21st and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 208, Committee Substitute.
That's just been a third reading, report of engrossment, and final passage.
Report of Enrollment Committee.
Board Bills 219 and 208, Committee Substitute.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. We will dispense with line items 21 and 22. Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, April the 21st, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers, and that's the swearing in and the first meeting of the 2015-2016 session. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Understanding all aldermen were present.
All right, Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adjourn the meeting sine die until Tuesday, April 21st, 2006.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We adjourn sine die.